This is the Hagman and Hagman Report for today. It's Thursday, April 3rd, 2014. This is a live broadcast. I'm Doug Hagman, co-host along with my son Joe Hagman. Together, we are the Hagman and Hagman Report, coming to you live from our studio here in Northwest Pennsylvania. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of unbiased and uncensored news, information, analysis, and incredible information from our guest here who will be joining us shortly, I believe probably in the next 30 minutes, Nathan Leal, Watchman's Cry. That's his website. It's linked off of HomelandSecurityUS.com, which, by the way, is our home base. Folks, you're listening to the only show where the news is presented in 3D. We look beyond the headlines, the bylines, and bring in the news behind the news, not the 24/7, all the time shooting what happened at Fort Hood, although that's important. But we do span the information well beyond the flavor of the day. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. As I said, our home base on the internet is HomelandSecurityUS.com. We're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There, tune us in at the Hagman and HagmanReport.com. You got to spell that whole thing out. 2 N's on Hagman. And, of course, spell out the word and. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you for your belief and trust in us. And thank you for your patience over the last week and a half as we were traveling on the road. We covered a lot of miles, stopped in many different locations, talked to a lot of people, and of course that took away from certain things, including the show, which I feel now that we've been re-energized. We feel re-energized coming back. I want to thank everyone that we've met. Joe, anyway, welcome back to the studio. It is
great to be back here.
That's great.
Yeah, we had some issues with our sound on Tuesday with Standeo, and we had to close the show early, but it is, as they say, there's no place like home. It's great to be back in studio, great to be sitting here in the office, and Nathan Leal will be joining us shortly, and looking forward to his breakdown. He's continuing to break down the Super Bowl and the halftime show, and he's putting together some graphics and things. This is why he's going to be a little bit late. So we're looking forward to that.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be an amazing show with him because just knowing what he's going to be talking about, folks, it really pay very close attention. I do believe his delivery will be very deliberate, very precise. And that, of course, is something that we have to really, or I want everyone to pay attention to, because really it's extremely critical to listen to what he's got to say. Folks, I want to share something with you here before we talk about what's going on. Let's see here. Okay. We're just checking audio levels here. Folks in the chat, can you hear me okay? We're piecing together some equipment and some new equipment that came, and we're actually not all of it came through, so we're piecing together. In the chat room, I'm looking at the chat room, and I'm chopping bad. Okay.
Yeah, I don't hear any choppy sound, but apparently, I don't know what it is. Maybe you want to just check your headset connection.
Everything looks good here.
Troy says we're good. And folks, if you want, I'll post a link in the chat room, CUBN, Christians United Broadcasting Network, for clear FM quality sound.
Absolutely.
And I'll post this way to listen into the chat room now, an alternative way to hear the show. And it is always much better sound quality than on Blog Talk Radio.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to share something with you. It was kind of funny today. We traveled, some 2,000 miles plus by car to Orlando and back, and over the last, plus all the traveling we did from Orlando all across the state of Florida to meet various people. I just want to let you know, folks, there will be some investigative news coming out tomorrow about what we've been doing. I think it's extremely important. I'll be appearing on Caravan to Midnight with John B. Wells tomorrow. More on that as the evening progresses. But one thing I got to just tell you this, folks, I think you're going to be. I just want to share this because I think this is hilarious in a way. Things happen in life that sometimes you just don't have any control over, or think of this. We got back last night here to my home. We got back at I don't know, sometime pretty close to 1 o'clock in the morning after traveling pretty much all day. And we had met Pastor Langford in the morning for breakfast, him and his wife. Fantastic people. But more about that later. But just on a humorous note, to start things off humorous, because we can't be dark and doomy all the time. Guys, this is for you. And guys, you know what I'm talking about. When you say, for example, you're going to fix something on your wife's car and you don't do it, sometimes it can bite you right back in the butt, okay? I've been telling my wife, her brake light was out for, I don't know, probably 2 months now. And she said, would you please fix it? And I said, sure, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. You know how it is, guys, right? You're going to take care of it. Well, let me tell you something. If you're listening to this and you've got something wrong with a car, definitely take care of it. I had an appointment at 8 o'clock this morning, and I left, and this is after being gone, for 12 days, and I had got up, and I went to get into my car, and I had a flat tire. Of course, I hadn't driven it in 12 days. So I grabbed my wife's car after moving some vehicles around in the driveway. Again, guys, you know how that is, right? If you have kids that drive, that live with you, sometimes they park behind you. Anyway, so this was actually a dentist appointment. We've got a series of dental appointments, and they're complex because of infection in my jaw and stuff. But anyway, so it was important for me because of the time involved in this, and because of what he had to do. It was important for me to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, precisely at 8. Well, I left after having the flat tire and having to move vehicles around. I finally left with 10 minutes to spare. So I'm figured I'm good. I pull out of my driveway, and I know in subdivisions, in townships, the police presence, right? Pretty significant police presence.
We have a high school real close too, so
right.
They like to sit on, around the school. There are streets that have speed limits of 25, 30 miles an hour on
15 even, yeah.
Right, and streets that would normally have 35, 40 miles an hour.
So again, gentlemen, I'm talking to you guys now. Make sure you do take care of things like brake lights. Well, being in the hurry that I was, I got in my wife's car. I went like gangbusters down this road close to my house, and quickly, I might add. And I passed a cop, and I didn't know I passed the police officer. I didn't know until, of course, I had the red flashing, blue flashing lights in my rearview mirror. And now I'm on a road that's actually a busier road after the one I passed him on. So I couldn't stop where I was at. So I had to motion to the police officer where I was going to turn left, and I did, and such. So I pulled off to the side of the road and way off, so wouldn't endanger him and all this. And I should mention this as well. Because I was running, I'm usually like 10 minutes early for my appointments, and because I was running late, actually the dentist called me on my cell phone, which I don't really carry a cell phone except for this trip I had, and he had the cell phone number only because if I didn't make it back in time, we could communicate. Well, at the very moment I passed the cop, the dentist called to make sure that I was going to be on time. Now, if you can picture this in your mind, here I am. The speed limit is 25. I'm going at least 50. I'm on my cell phone. I don't wear the seatbelts apparently. I don't like to wear seatbelts. I had no seatbelt, and brake lights, my wife's brake lights, the ones I was supposed to fix, weren't working. And I also rolled through a stop sign. So can you get the picture now? And I'm late for this appointment.
Yeah, and yesterday, I might add, driving through West Virginia, I had it at least on 80 throughout the state, and expecting a police officer to pull us over, and nothing.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. So I mean, and thank God that it was an uneventful trip in terms of that. But so Anyway, the flashing red lights in my rearview mirror. I did take the police officer on kind of a rather longer route than that he was expecting. But finally, he stopped me. He walks up to the car. Now, I know pretty much 90% of the police officers in my township, or in the township in which I live. This gentleman I didn't know. So he walks up to the car, and he comes to my window, and I'm pretty breathless at this point because I'm rushing, and I'm trying to get to where I need to go. And he looks at me and he says, do you know why I stopped you? The only thing that came out of my mouth was, I'm thinking, pick a reason. So I looked at him, I said, oh boy, a multiple choice question. Okay, and he looks at me and he said, he kind of chuckled. He said, yeah, here's the thing. He said, I'm not sure exactly how fast you were going because I was just setting up my radar, but I can tell you this: you were going twice the speed limit. You were going 50 miles an hour at least. You did roll through the stop sign. You have not only the one side of your brake lights out, but the center brake light, which I didn't even know exists. And you were talking on your cell phone, and not only that, you weren't wearing a seatbelt. And then you took me on this ride for a block and a half. And I said, well, sir, I was just trying to protect, make sure, because I didn't want to stop in the middle of the road, and I'm giving him the song and dance. He said, you know what? I don't know where to start. I don't know where to start, so I won't. He said, I'm going to give you a warning for your brake lights. Just get them fixed. Sit here and let me just run your plate, make sure you're not driving a stolen car and everything. I said, cool, that's great. So he came back, or he took my license and he ran my wife's car, and everything came back fine. But if you can just imagine that, so I feel very fortunate, and I guess where's the punchline in all this? There's really no punchline. It's just even on the worst day or under the worst circumstances, good things do happen. And boy, what could have been a really messy, very expensive ticket turned out to be a warning. So I bought the tail lights, which were $14.98, I think it was. And yeah, I haven't put them in yet, though. I will, I promise, tonight.
I'll help you out with that.
Thank you very much. But I guess the whole thing is, sometimes a little bit of levity. And, of course, the officer is very pleasant. And we met, and it was great. He could have really socked me for what and I'm going to flat out tell you, I was guilty of everything that he could have accused me of doing in that little speed thing. But he didn't. And I kind of mentioned that to say this, too. Joe and we met a police officer at the Orlando Prophecy Conference, and she kind of took me aside a little bit and said, you know something? I want you to know there are good police officers in the police forces. There are police officers who care about the Constitution, care about your rights, who care about where the country is going. We are not all bad. And folks, please understand that. Like in any organization, you've got people who are very, very good people, quality people that care about you and care about us, who know what's going on and don't agree with it. In fact, this police officer, I don't have her permission to say her name. I'm not going to do that. But she was very, very extremely kind. And she said, I was just worried about how you're kind of throwing the whole bunch of police into the conversation, painting them with a broad brush. But please know that there are police officers out here who care, who know exactly what's going on and don't agree with it. So to this young lady that I spoke with, who's been a police officer in Cleveland, I can say that, Cleveland, Ohio, I just want to say thank you for being one of the good guys. And for the gentleman officer who stopped me today in Milkrick Township, Pennsylvania, and I believe is one of the best police forces in the country, I just want to say thank you very much for being an upstanding guy. Not for letting me go necessarily, but knowing your department, knowing the people within your department who care about our rights and the fact that, we do have rights, and they're not here to take them away from us. So, folks, like everything else, we talk about organizations, we talk about people, we talk about, we talk about the government. Believe it or not, there are some good people that work for the government. But
hard to believe.
Well,
no, I know there are.
So
far and few between. There are good intended people with motives that are pure.
Yes, and trying to change things. If you can make a difference, if you're part of an organization, you can make a difference, then that's great. So I suppose I said all of that not to waste your time, but just to let you know, sometimes, things can go really good and then really bad, but there are a lot of good people out there, a lot of people who care, a lot of people who understand. They get up in the morning just like you and I do. They got the same problems you and I do, and they've got the same worries that we do. And we should know that. And because we see, what do we see? Do we see videotape or videos on YouTube of police officers being good people? No. You see the cops that are being not being good. You never see the good on YouTube.
Right.
Rarely.
Very rarely do you see that. It's always the stories that make the news that are the overreaching of authority kind of police, the police who make, it might even be, as I said earlier, well-intended but make bad decisions, as we all do at some point in time. And then you just have the inherently bad police officers. But those are the ones that will constantly make the news. Those are the ones that will constantly receive the attention, as the people who are making a difference as law enforcement officers are not, you don't see those on the news too often. Although I do remember a story out of New York where a cop, and maybe he called into the show, maybe it was something we saw, but bought a homeless person a pair of boots. And this is just one example. At the same time, those stories never get out. Nor do I think. People should. How can you be on top of reporting things like that? We don't see the everyday good people, do for each other, which is the way we, as you said, we met with Pastor Langford, and he talked about how, people, how he was raised to respect your elders, hold doors open, be polite, yes sir, no sir, and how this whole generation is being brought up completely different, and it's completely opposite, and there is no real humanity left, and there's no love left. There's no looking at each other as neighbors and brothers. It's enemies and materialism and hate. And so the stories that are good are not going to be brought to the attention of people, because that's not what the people inherently want anymore. It's the nastiness, it's the gore, it's the evil, and that's what our society sadly has been driven to.
Exactly, and I'm glad you brought that up. But I did want to kind of inject some humor in there. So, guys, if you promise your wife, going back a little bit, if you promise your wife that you're going to change the tail light or fix the brake light or whatever it might be, or change the oil, kind of a lesson, go ahead and do it. Because it might be you that's stuck on the side of the road, or you that's stopped by a police officer, or whatever. So just, on your to-do list to make sure you get that done as soon as possible. And I want to say something about yesterday, too. Yesterday we, folks, I got to tell you, my brain was fried here the last couple of days. We would wake up in a hotel room. I would have to sit and think, now first of all, what state are we in? What city are we in? And where are we at physically? And we woke up, I think, in Charlotte yesterday. Charlotte, North Carolina. Was that where we woke up yesterday? Okay.
Yes. And
all right.
We tried to stay at the same hotel on the way down as we did coming back, and it just didn't work out. So we were on either end of the city, one end on the way down and one end on the way back.
Which does kind of dovetail into what I'm about to tell you too.
Oh, man.
And you think you've got, folks, let me tell you something. I am apparently not the brightest bulb not the brightest bulb here. The night before, yesterday morning, we talked to Pastor Langford, and we set up a breakfast meeting in the morning for yesterday morning in Charlotte. And where? Well, International House of Cakes, IHOP, right? I guess I didn't take it into account how many IHOPs there are in Charlotte or anywhere, apparently.
Yeah, we don't have any in Erie here where we live, and there were about 3 in a 10-mile radius.
Right.
Where we were in Charlotte.
Exactly. So what I had done the night before was I had gotten the address of the International House of Pancakes where we were going to meet at 9 o'clock in the morning. I had sent it by email to Pastor Langford, even with a map, if you can believe that. I don't know why. I mean, he lives there, so what? But anyway, I figured I'd be, as helpful as I could. Again, understand, folks. Sometimes I could be like a bumbling idiot. So I sent him this information, 9 o'clock, with the address and a map to the IHOP. So at some point, and I don't know where this was or how this happened, we were talking to the woman at the front desk of the hotel, and she said, okay, to get to the IHOP that you're looking for, or get to this particular IHOP, you turn right, go down here 4 miles, and turn left, and it's going to be in this little plaza thing. So we do just that. Now, we left him plenty of time. So we got there, and there was no Pastor Langford. Well, folks, you know what happened, right? It was a wrong IHOP. Despite me sending the right address to him, I went to the wrong one. We went to the wrong one. Come to find out, this International House of Pancakes, where we were supposed to meet him, we could have taken a baseball and thrown it from our hotel window and hit this thing.
Yeah, it was down one street. It was less than a block away from our hotel.
So yes, and I've got to say that Pastor Langford and his wife are the greatest people. I mean, super people, and understood, had patience with us. We were 25 minutes late when we should have been not only on time but early, all because, again, me. And I don't know. Sometimes it was a senior moment. You just don't. But I just got sidetracked and got the directions from the front desk, and of course when we got in the night before, it was all dark, so you couldn't see anything, and we weren't looking for an IHOP. And oh man! But anyway, I got to tell you what a great man Pastor Langford is. We had some great fellowship with him and his wife. He had given us a lot of information yesterday, a lot of advice, a lot of just a tremendous. The man that you hear on our shows is the man in person. There is no. What you see is what you get. He's an honest guy. He's a man of integrity. Him and his wife both. They're just tremendously hard-working people. We were talking about this, and then I'm just going to be quiet about our meeting, folks. If you haven't done this, and it seems like we're always talking about people's books or saying you got to read this or read that. Well, sometimes it does help to understand the situation we're in right now, where we're at, the time frame. If you haven't gone on to Pastor Langford's website, voiceofevangelism.com, do so. And please, I would urge everyone to grab a hold of Revelation 13 Revealed. We talked about this. We talked about his book yesterday. And I had some certain questions I wanted to ask him about his book. I've got a copy of it here. And he answered them, and everything made sense. Where we're at today is to me, the on-ramp to the book of Revelation. It answers a lot of questions. So I would highly recommend Revelation 13 Revealed. It's inexpensive. It's doable. But definitely go to voiceofevangelism.com. Pastor David Langford, grab a hold of that book. You'll be so blessed by the information in that book. And that's all I really have to say about that, other than the fact that I was just so impressed meeting Pastor Langford in person for the first time, and his wife. What gracious people, what wonderful people they are. And you know something? Pastor Langford, I could tell you right now, when he's on the radio citing Scripture, my goodness, no notes, no Bible. The Scripture that he cited without verbatim, and it just blew me away, his depth of knowledge and understanding, and also the understanding about where we're at and where we're headed. So definitely keep Pastor Langford in your prayers, because he's an important guy. We need to keep him around. And, of course, if you can grab a hold of Revelation 13 Revealed, please do that. That, to me, that's one of the most critical works right there, along with Paul McGuire's book and Greg Jackson's book, based on the facts contained in Greg Jackson's book. So, fantastic information. That's the thing. If you don't have time to listen to our show all the time or whatever, these books will give you tremendous knowledge and insight. So, Revelation 13 Revealed, fantastic. Please do what you can, and also if you do go to his website, voiceofelvangelism.com, make sure you tell him that you heard it from Doug and Joe, because that way he can keep track. But anyway, go ahead.
No, we do have Nathan with us.
Okay, good.
I want to bring him on now. His website is watchmanscry.com. Nathan, I just want to bring you on and let you know that I'm pulling up your website here, and I'm not getting anything on my end. And I know you were just updating it for the show.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
If any listeners want to know if there's a shadow group of rogue elements that do not like the Watchman and the job that we are doing to warn and to alarm and to wake people up, try to log into my website right now. Because I called you up, Joe, and I told you that I was going to put some notes for today's show, and now my website has disappeared.
Yeah.
So
I'm getting a blank page.
Exactly. When I try to log in, it's a white page, and when I try to use my FTP client to log into my server, it's bumping me off. So that's happening right now in real time. And what do you think, Joe? I mean, and Doug, this is proof right here that, and probably I'm going to be able to get on when the show's done. But right now, the powers that be and those people who have sold their soul that are working in some boiler room somewhere in Langley or wherever they hover underground to do their cyber warfare on the Watchmen, if they're listening right now and they don't like what we're doing, well, that's just too bad, because basically we're warning the people, Doug and Joe, that this is a real war that's going on, this is a real battle that's going on, and these minions of Satan have sold their soul, and they're going to burn in hell because they have made their choice. They have chosen the powers of darkness, and it's evident right now.
Absolutely.
Because they turned off my website right now as we speak.
And bookmark watchmanscry.com, and if the website isn't able to be up by the time the show is complete, and I know Nathan called me, talked to him twice before the show, and he was going to be updating the site with some images and some notes on what he was going to talk about. So bookmark the site, and if we can't get to it tonight, just check it out tomorrow. Listen to the rebroadcast if you need to, but definitely keep that handy, because you're going to want to refer to that if you're listening to this again.
And Nathan, let me tell you this, if I might, and listeners as well. When we were in Florida, some news came out. I'm working on an investigation that is going to be, most of it is going to come out tomorrow, and it's a very complex, very intensive investigation. That'll connect some dots. It complements and overlaps the cold case policy, Arpaio's investigation, Mike Zillow's investigation. Again, we are 100% behind their investigation. But the reason I bring this up is because I had that telephone conversation. Part of our reason for leaving early, and I can say this now, for leaving early, going down to Florida early, is because there was a couple of contacts, one in particular down there that I needed to speak to in person, who was willing to talk with me. He gave me information. But in the lead up to that, I had a telephone conversation, a cell phone conversation with an inside source within the government that was giving me information. We were exchanging back and forth. A good guy, 100% good guy. To make a long story short, I shouldn't say every, there was one particular sentence, one particular phrase, and I'm not going to go any further, that only he and I used in the cell phone conversation. That phrase appeared on a website. The only place that could have been gained was from some sort of monitoring our communications. Nathan, what you're going through right now is the same thing. You're the target of surveillance, and not only surveillance, but active. What do you call it? Attacks. This is crazy.
It's crazy, and it's frustrating, and it gives credence that all this is true, Doug. But it's frustrating because we're doing we're part of this battle, and that's what it is. Let's just be frank here. For the people that are sleeping and the people that are sitting on their hands and just wondering if this is going to happen or if what they're warning about is going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, it's happening right now. There is a war on for the society, for the souls of men, for the finances, for the wealth, for the future, for life as we know it going on right now. And for those that do not understand this, they're going to be left behind. Now, Doug, I'm going to share some things today that's going to give more obvious proof that we are standing at the cliff right now in our society, here in America and worldwide. There are some major, major events that are coming, huge, huge events. And these events are going to affect every person listening. Whether they want to admit it or not, it's going to affect everyone. It's going to affect their dollar, their bank account, their future, their job, everything. It may even affect their loved ones' lives because there may be a draft come out of this when the war really gets going. A war is coming, ladies and gentlemen. And Doug and Joe, I came on your show on February the 9th, I believe it was, a week after the Super Bowl, and shared some of the findings, the preliminary findings that I was able to find to pull out of the Super Bowl. And since then, I have still been seeking to uncover the hidden truths that were hidden in the Super Bowl and in the commercials and in the production on everything. And the stuff that I have uncovered, I'm going to share tonight, Doug and Joe, and listeners, please pay attention. Please take notes. I'm also going to be updating it and adding it to another audio that I'm going to be releasing soon. But I just released one audio that was actually I'm on part 5. Doug and Joe, I don't know if you've been able to hear any of it, but I have released in parts 4 and 5 the hidden secret that was placed during the Bruno Mars halftime show on their prepare message. I was able to find the word prepare 22 times. Now, Doug, I know that you've been on the road, and Joe as well, so did you have a chance to see some of the findings that I had? Because I was going to also share with the listeners. I wanted them to be able to go to my website and look at the images, so if they can't do that, I'm just going to have to verbally explain what's going on. But for those that have the ability, after the program and after I fix my website and after you're able to go there, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But Doug and Joe, did you happen to see any of the images that I placed as far as the prepare messages that I found?
I didn't, Nathan, because I tried. It was about 10 minutes before airtime when I tried to log on your site, and I got the regular site. I got your unupdated one. So no.
I have seen some of those, Nathan. I have not been able to, or had a chance to listen to the audios, but I've checked out the notes and images.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is just use descriptions, and I'm not just going to concentrate on the halftime show itself, because the commercials, when you put them together, created a story. They created a narrative, if you will. And Doug, do you remember in the old days before the internet was around, when people would kidnap someone, they would take cutouts from newspapers and magazines and form sentences and for the ransom note?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, we have your family member, and they would glue it on. The commercials that were played during the Super Bowl formed a ransom note for the world, and they formed a narrative of what is going to happen to this planet very, very soon. And the things that are going to happen are going to span all three dimensions. They're going to span the physical dimension, the spiritual dimension, and, of course, the dimension of our minds, because people are going to find themselves haunted by the things that are coming. But there were 50 commercials played during the Super Bowl, and I've watched all of them, and I've examined many of them, and I've dissected them, and I downloaded them to my computer, and I used still shots, fast-forwarded, I went backwards, and listened and looked at the environment, the setting of how the commercials were filmed, and also it's very interesting that when a lot of the commercials would end, they would place a monogram or a motto or a symbol or something about the branding for their particular product, or if it was a trailer of a TV show or of a movie, and the branding words or sentence that would end the commercial, I started noticing a pattern, because if you looked at the commercials over and over, it was interesting. They were starting to relay a message, and the message spanned what I'm talking about right here. They talked about that they are here, they are coming, we're in control. It showed that there's going to be an influx, an invasion of not only physical creatures and physical war, but there's also going to be an influx and an attack of spiritual beings, of creatures from the netherworld, underground creatures, invisible creatures, that the world's going to find itself under attack. So I plan to talk about that in an upcoming program. I don't have the images to show you right now, unfortunately. But as far as the prepare message, when we first spoke on February the 9th, I shared what I found at that time. And at that time, I shared what most everyone else saw during the Super Bowl, which was, it started with the choir of 12 children singing the first 5 lines, or actually it's the second stanza of the Bruno Mars song Billionaire. And the song, everyone's heard it as they were singing it, the children's choir, they were holding hands, and then they got to the part about prepare. They said prepare 3 times, and then prepare flashed before the screen that was behind them 3 times. And Doug and Joe, you remember that, of course, right?
Absolutely, right. And we know that 3 is an important number. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to overtalk you, but 3 is an important symbolic number. It holds great significance in the Illuminati, in that venue. But go ahead.
Okay, that was revealed. We all saw it. I'm going to look here in my old notes that are local on my computer so I can have some things to refer to. Okay, I just pulled it up. So Nathan, for those that remember...
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to let you know that there are people in our chat room have found sub-pages and been able to access your website, not the main page, but some of the things that you have updated since March 27th, 2014.
Well, thank you. And the whole website is still up there. It's just the index page that is not. Very clever. So for those that have it bookmarked or the prepare message or the notes, I did send out in my email the link to the notes for what I'm talking about right here. So if you did receive an email from me, you can actually directly access the notes. So Doug and Joe, I think if you are on my email list, you will have that, and it'll be there. So anyway, This is what I was going to say. When the Super Bowl was initially planned, there are certain people that are in charge of planning it. A gentleman named Randy Kirshner, who is the son of the departed Kirshner from Kirshner's Rock Concert. We talked about that, Doug, several months ago. And he's part of the think tank and the brain trust that plans the Super Bowl, and he has a relationship with another gentleman that has been involved in the Olympic ceremonies and Emmy Awards. So it's a very close-knit group of individuals who do this. Now, as I looked and found all of the in-your-face clues that they produced, I asked myself, did they do it on purpose? What was their intent? Did they plan for anyone to find it? And I'm not sure if they did plan for anyone to find it. I think that one of the reasons that they place hidden messages is for their own gain. It's to gloat. It's to be able to say to themselves that we did give the warning, and if they're too stupid to see it, too bad. But here's what they did, Doug and Joe. There's a company called Pixmob. That's Pixmob, and you can go to the website, pixmob.com. This company came up with a new technology where previously, before the Super Bowl, they would hand out these wristbands, and these wristbands had 3 little LED lights on them, and if the entire crowd that's, for example, on the floor of a concert or in the stands of a concert has these wristbands on, remotely through computer and infrared beams, they can control the lights that everyone's wearing on the wristband and actually make colors appear over the crowd or form words or make different symbols, etc. And I had a link to that also in my notes, but they're called Pixmob. Well, Pixmob, they're from Canada. They went to the people that planned the Super Bowl, Mr. Kirshner, and they said, hey, wouldn't this be neat if we got all of the audience to wear these bracelets? And Mr. Kirshner saw the technology and said, oh, this is great. So he ordered 100,000 of these little lights for the Super Bowl fans to wear. But instead of them being bracelets, he asked for the little lights to be placed on ski hats that you would put on your head because it was going to be cold. So they did. They ordered 100,000, and they custom-made 100,000 ski hats with these little lights. And when the Super Bowl fans arrived at MetLife Stadium, they were given this little packet, and they were told and directed that, hey, there's a ski hat in there. Do not open it until you're instructed during the halftime show, and then we want you to put them on your head, and you're going to be part of the biggest screen, TV screen in America, and 100 million people are going to see you being part. Basically what it does is every person becomes a pixel of light. So these hats were put on during the halftime show, and the people wore them. They were instructed to turn them on, and on my notes I have a video of someone that actually filmed them putting them on, and they got all excited. And this is the thing that's very evil, in my opinion, because the Illuminati loves symbols. The Freemasons love to have their symbols, and they love to have them hidden in plain sight, and they believe that those that are enlightened, that have been initiated, those that are privileged, those that have the wisdom of the mysteries, and of course the mysteries is Lucifer, those that have that can interpret their symbols. Everyone else, too bad. You're just part of the population, you're ignorant, and you're not privileged, so you don't get to know. Well, when the Super Bowl fans put on these hats, Doug and Joe, what the fans did not question, and because they didn't question what they were doing, was, in my opinion, also a slam dunk success for MK Ultra and the mind control minions who are now socially engineering this world to accept the New World Order. Because over the last, and by the way, later on in the program I'm going to get into this and talk about it more, but there is a think tank group of scientists and Freudian psychologists, these mad scientists who dissect brains, and they like to data mine from humans and see how people are going to respond to certain stimuli. There are these individuals of the New World Order, Illuminati, Satanists, who have sold their soul, and they have been studying how to control the masses. They've been studying how to use propaganda to steer society to be able to comply with their plans. And the name of this group is an institute. And Doug and Joe, I don't know if you've heard of it. Listeners, write this down. And I believe that the reason that they're shutting me down for this show is because I'm going to mention them right now. They're called the Tavistock Institute. And the Tavistock is spelled Tavistock. So, Doug, apparently you're acquainted with them.
Very much
so. The Tavistock Institute was formed in the early 1900s, and they have played a role in steering Western society and now the entire planet to comply and to not argue with the plans of political engineering and foreign policy and wars that have taken place over the last century. The Tavistock Institute was used to get the West to go to World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, every war that we can name, Iraq, Wars I and II, and the present war on terror. They have been used to steer and to successfully reshape and control society. They were founded in Great Britain, from the Wellington House. For those that are taking notes, and if anyone wants to Google them, there's limited information on them, but these individuals are now embedded and immersed in all parts of Western intelligence, British intelligence, European intelligence, as well as American intelligence, including the NSA, CIA, and all those other minions that are being used. MI6, MI5. MI5 is domestic. MI6 is the foreign arm tentacle of British intelligence. And these individuals are part of the New World Order. They're part of the Illuminati, and these individuals have sold their soul, and they're evil, and they use MK Ultra techniques, and they have studied how people respond, how people react. They have formulated a perfect template to be able to control society in every level. And I don't mean just levels of newspaper reports or the media. We're talking every level, entertainment, as far as, of course, the media, news reports, political wranglings, et cetera, all parts of the New World Order think tank and what is needed to form a successful template and script for the New World Order to be successful. And also, they are working right now, Doug and Joe, into the next war. They are working in lies and in scams and in shillery and in they get on the internet and they place fake stories. They make up stories. They're using propaganda techniques that were forged over the last 100 years. So they're very good at this. They're great at coming up with buzzwords. If you can remember, during the first Gulf War, they came up with buzzwords about Saddam, the butcher of Baghdad. You remember that? And Absolutely. They came up with collateral damage as a buzzword. They've come up with a lot of words that get people agitated and that get people to come together to be behind their plans. Now, right now, they are working on planning the next war. They're working on the campaign that they're going to use, and it's going to be full of lies. If we look back at the first Iraq war with Daddy Bush and then the second Iraq war, they were involved. Tavistock was involved in the propaganda campaign. Doug, do you remember, and I'm sure you do, but do you remember during Gulf War I, they used a campaign where when Saddam invaded Kuwait, the ambassador of Kuwait had his daughter, who said she was a nurse in a Kuwaiti hospital, testify before the Security Council of the UN, and she was crying, and she was saying, yeah, the Iraqi soldiers came in and they took the babies out of the incubators and set them on the ground and let them die. You remember that story? During the Gulf War I, it was during the hearing?
Yes.
To convince us to go to war?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Let me just give the listeners a little bit of background on this. It was this testimony given before the Congressional Human Rights Caucus that occurred on October 10, 1990. Her first name is Naira, I believe it is. And the testimony was actually broadcast, cited numerous times by Bush to back. I mean, this rationale back to the Gulf War, and this was all fabricated in advance.
Doug and Joe, can you hear me very well? Because I can't hear you. You're barely coming in now. I don't know if they're affecting our signal.
Can you hear me?
Barely. It's stuttering.
Okay. Things are green on my end. I don't know what the issue is. I can hear you. Folks are saying I'm breaking into it. So I'm just listening to turn over the open.
All right. There was a disconnect there. Ladies and gentlemen, exactly. Well, we'll get back here. Research in the now, here in America, there are options. Otherwise, things are green on our end. Not sure what is going on here.
been there since
Joe, I'm back, but I don't think you can hear me, can you?
I don't think you can hear me, Nathan, but we can hear you clear.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
We can hear you loud and clear, Nathan. If you want to just go ahead and try to fix it.
You can hear me loud and clear. So can the listeners hear me? I can't hear you, so
yes.
I can barely hear you. But
I can hear you. Yes.
The listeners can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and go for it then, because I need to get this out. When they put on their hats, when the children were singing the Bruno Mars song, and they got to the part about prepare, and prepare appeared behind them in the screen. Now, Doug and Joe, of course, you remember that, right? At the same time that happened, the little hats that everyone was wearing also formed the word prepare, but the word went as wide as the field was on the stands, and it started to rise, and it turned the fans into a giant electronic LED marquee.
Exactly.
So the words rose up the words prepare rose up, and they were about 80 yards wide and about 30 yards tall, and they rose up through the lower level, and they were in red letters, and then they went to the middle level and then rose to the very top. Doug and Joe, I had some images of that on my page where I show that, but the word prepare was actually on the fans themselves, and it showed on the left side of the field, so on each part of the sideline it showed, and then in the end zones it showed. So each time the children sang prepare, it showed 4 times. It cycled 3 times, so that was a total of 12 times the word prepared went right over the head of the fans. So the fans were used to warn themselves, and most people did not catch this. Now, Doug, did you see those images that I had, or Joe, did you ever get a chance to see them?
Yes. Nathan, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, now it's better. It's better now.
Okay. Yes. As a matter of fact, and folks in the chat, just give me a thumbs up or something if you can hear better. But yes, the images were very clear. You had taken video captures of those images. Prepare, and folks, we talked about this on February 9th, as well as subsequent to that. So go ahead, Nathan.
Well, this is the part that's I find diabolical in what the Illuminati did and Tavistock and all these minions. They did not plan for anyone to notice, though. They didn't, because it happened so fast. It rose up within 1 second, and unless you freeze-framed it, you would not have seen it. Also, it was not as clear because not everyone had their hats on, but probably 80% of the fans did have their hats on. So I find it diabolical that they used the fans to warn themselves that they needed to prepare, and it went right over their heads. Now, when you think about the symbolism of that, we're telling them to prepare, but it's over their heads, and they don't even know it. So they're too stupid. But we're still telling them. How funny is that, guys? Ha, ha, ha. So that's what they did. Incredible, Doug, that they did this. Now, the other very evil, diabolical signature of the Illuminati in this was these hats that they had everyone wear had 3 lights that people placed on their forehead, and they were illuminated right over their forehead. So the third eye of illumination that the Illuminati and Freemasons depend so much on for their enlightenment, they placed synthetically over all of the people and had and illuminated the people in the area of the third eye. So all of the fans put on these hats. They didn't question what was going to be displayed on their foreheads. They did not question whether they would agree with it or not. And I'm curious if I was able to ask someone that attended the Super Bowl and said, hey, what do you think about being used as one of the little pixels to tell the whole world they need to prepare and to tell yourself you need to prepare, but you don't even know you did it? How do you feel about that? And I don't think a lot of people would take too kindly to it if they really analyzed how serious this thing is, but that's what the Illuminati did. And so the question needs to be asked, if it happened so fast that no one caught it, why did they do it? And again, Joe and Doug, it's for nefarious reasons. It's for evil. It was to, again, involve the people just like they did during the Olympic ceremony. They involved the people in their ritual, in their illumination, satanic ritual. And that's what it was, because they used the color red to go over the people's heads to show that that's what's coming. Bloodshed is coming to the world. Now, when the children were singing the song from Bruno Mars's Billionaire, and they got to the part about prepare, And the words to the song say, every time I close my eyes, I see my name in shining lights. Those first two lines are the Illuminati and the globalists and the elite. It's them that they are so power hungry they cannot wait for their power. They thirst over it. They slobber over it. They see their name in shining lights. Line 3 says a different city every night. Oh, why? From line 3 and on, the narrative changes. It's no longer the Illuminati talking about that they want to be wealthy. It is now the warning cry. So they're giving us a hint. They said a different city every night. Now, right there, Doug, is the answer to what is the prepare message about. Well, it's about a different city every night. American cities we're talking about, because behind the children, when they said a different city every night, oh, why, I swear, the drum beat hit a cadence of 5 beats, and the American flag appeared in five different sizes behind the children. So when they said a different city, and then they showed the flag with 5 beats changing size, what they were illustrating where there is going to be 5 American cities that are going to be attacked, that are going to feel an attack. Now, whether it's a terrorist attack or war or a nuclear bomb, I don't know, but they said it, they announced it, and it was right there. So a different city every night, oh, why? And by the way, they're asking, why? Why does it have to happen? Well, it's because they want it to happen. So 5 cities, ladies and gentlemen, the Illuminati, New World Order, has announced 5 cities in America are going to get attacked. There's going to be fire. Now, how do I know there's fire? Because when the next line, line 4, says, I swear the world better prepare. When they get to that line, if you're looking at the video, the field has lights shining over it that turn red, and they look like fire. And if you look at it in slow motion, Doug, it is so obvious that it's flames on the field while they're singing these words. So flames are coming to the cities. 5 American cities are going to burn. Now, line 4 also says, I swear the world better prepare. The Illuminati is into their initiations. And in their initiations, they swear blood oaths. They swear that they will have their tongue cut out and be dismembered if they disclose the things that they have seen. They swear to one another. They swear they will never disclose it. But in line 4, they are telling us, I swear the world better prepare. So they're given an oath that from line 3, it's America, but line 4, it becomes the whole world. I swear the world better prepare, and then they say the word 3 times. Now, Doug, I see we're at the top of the hour. Do you want me to keep on, or you want to take a break?
Well, I'll tell you what, Nathan, why don't we hold it right there, hold that thought. We'll take our break now. We'll come back, because I think this is an extremely important message here. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Nathan's research investigation into the Super Bowl, the last Super Bowl, the venue in which the Illuminati is sending out a message. And very interesting, by the way, folks, and Nathan, about Pix Mob. It's interesting because, folks, listen to this. The hats at the Super Bowl embedded with LED pixels, they were controlled by infrared lights placed around the stadium and controlled by one person, a director, who controlled the light patterns in real time. And guess what? And I'm sure, Nathan, you know this. The whole idea was inspired by tribal rituals and even more modern rituals. For example, the annual Burning Man Festival in Nevada. Well, what was that all about? If you research that, of course, the Burning Man ritual it's a New Age style group or New Age style agenda. So this is what we're looking at. Fantastic information, Nathan. Fantastic find. Prepare. With that, folks, you're listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report on the 3rd day of April 2014. We're live in studio. Our very special guest.
Originally created and uploaded to YouTube by the Hagman and Hagman channel. To view the full show archives, please visit youtube.com/user/Hagman and Hagman.
Hour number 2 of the Hagman and Hagman Report live on this April 3rd, 2014, back in studio, our first day back from our extended trip down to the Orlando Prophecy and the News Conference, which was great. But tonight we were joined by Nathan Leal. His website is watchmanscry.com. It is the main page is down right now, but keep that site bookmarked, watchmanscry.com, as we are talking about Nathan's research on the Super Bowl halftime show and what he has uncovered through his detailed investigation into the message that was being put out, prepare, and much more deeper hidden meanings as we are getting into here in the second hour. Nathan, are you back with us?
I am here. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks for... This is frustrating, you guys. When you're trying to do this and you're fighting the DOD and their little cyber warfare, not allowing my website to come up. So I plan to get it. In fact, I was trying during the break to download another FTP client, and it kept knocking me off. Even when I go to other websites, it turns white. So there's an obvious cyber war thing. How much time do we have left, Doug, before they pull the plug on all of us? Is this a privilege right now?
You know what, Nathan? That's an excellent question. I think we all have to ask ourselves, with respect to the Internet, and we see what's taking place with that, how long do we have? How many more programs do we have? We have to make the best out of every program. I do believe we have time, Nathan. However, I do believe, as we're seeing live right now, there's mischief afoot, and mischief afoot with respect to these little cyber attacks. I mean, Nathan, we were in Charlotte the night before last, the night before last, attempting to do a program, and it was on Tuesday, and we had actually we had brought our equipment with us, and we were broadcasting live with Stan Dale, and it was the weirdest thing because we had everything was a go. We were plugged, hardwired into the hotel system, which was a huge system. I won't go into detail, but the bottom line was, they asked us to stop broadcasting because when we were on the air, we had knocked off everyone else that was on that network. No one could access anything, and the only explanation given to me was some sort of cyber attack with whatever door we had open within the system that we were being cyber attacked. So, but bottom line is, look, we're having to fight this on a daily basis, and we can see right now with your website, folks, watchmanscry.com. The images that Nathan's referring to will be up there as soon as it's accessible. And you made a point. It might be accessible right after the broadcast, right?
I'm hoping.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I believe it will be, or at some point in the near future. But I'm checking it right now. It's still white. The index page, that is still white. And we will direct people after the broadcast directly to that site, your site, and we'll just hope for the best here.
By faith, God will bring us through.
Absolutely.
So, continuing on, this is the next part. I have a lot of things that I'm going to share, and I'm going to give a Cliff Notes version of a lot of the bullet point things that I have been able to uncover. In real time, if I were to actually expound on everything comprehensively, it would take hours and hours. And so what I'm going to do is, on my website, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a regular listener, you're getting my notifications. If not, when the website is back up, you can subscribe to notifications, and then I'll send you one when the new one comes out. And it's going to take probably another 3 or 4 hours, if not longer, to explain everything. But I'm going to give the main points of what's coming, Doug. Now, when the children were singing "The World Better Prepare," I swear the world better prepare, each time they said the word prepare, it appeared on the screen behind them. But then, when they were finished singing each part of the word prepare, there was a slight pause between each word. And when they paused between each word, behind them, the screen turned into static snow. And remember the snow that would appear on TVs when they'd go off the air in the old days, Doug? Those of us that can remember the static.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, between the prepares, it turned into static snow, and you even heard the sound of snow. So it did prepare, and then that weird sound, and then they said it again. Well, that little display sent a huge message, and this was another veiled threat from the New World Order, and it was this. Each time the static appeared, what was really happening was all of the regular programming was getting bumped off, and it was an emergency. What it did was it represented an emergency transmission from the emergency alert system, the emergency broadcast system. You know, when it comes on, please stand by. We interrupt this program. So what they were telling us was, while people are preparing, so they did it 3 times. So prepare number 1, prepare, and then static, we interrupt this program. And at some point, this is how it's going to happen in real time, in reality, Doug and Joe. There's going to be some messages that are going to start leaking out through the media. Maybe it'll be the lower third scrolling across Fox News on TV, or when whatever show someone's watching, and it'll just be some ominous message that people will go, huh? What? Really? And maybe it'll say that Russia has gone into the Ukraine, or they've gone into Syria, or we have volleyed shots back and forth to each other. I don't know what it's going to say, but there will be a notice given to the American public, but it will be watered down. It will be diluted. So the first prepare message will be given to people, and then it'll be interrupted with the broadcast transmission, and then it'll go up to another higher level. The second prepare will come forth, and then again they'll interrupt the broadcast, and then the third and final prepare will be stated. And when you watch the halftime show, if you happen to have the video, you can see that when they sang prepare, on the third prepare, the words prepare started climbing over the hats of the fans, and you can see it rising, but it doesn't make it all the way to the top on the third cycle. It just makes it maybe 2/3 of the way, and then the field explodes. So that also had a very, very ominous message that's very profound, and it is this. When the people are finally starting to understand, whoa, okay, I think we need to take this thing seriously. Hey, hun, do we have enough food? Maybe FEMA will give a warning, have 3 days of food, or have water, have batteries. And so while people are finally getting off their hands because the first 2 prepares, they didn't pay attention, during the third cycle of prepare, they're finally going to say, okay, let's go to Walmart and fill up the basket. While the family's getting into the car and shutting the doors, because the display on the field illustrated this so perfectly. The word prepare was climbing over the fans, and before it made it to the very top, the field explodes, Doug. So what that means is, while the people finally are deciding they're going to take the warning seriously, it will be too late because the bombs are going to explode over their heads. So while people are finally going to be getting ready, there's going to be many of them, and I would say at least a third right off the top, they're going to be eliminated right off the bat, because when the field explodes, the prepare is barely making it to the top of the stands, which are the cheap seats, the people who really don't pay attention in the nosebleed section, that are just occupied with their own entertainment. They're going to be caught off guard and eliminated right off the bat.
So Nathan, this is almost the equivalent, or the visual equivalent, of the societal structure. In other words, what the powers that be consider the class, like the class structure. You know, the people with the big tickets, the big money down below, the preferable seating, versus the people way up on top that can barely make it or afford to be there, are there. So what you're saying is it reflects a societal situation too, right? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. It's multi-layered. It has a lot of layers to it.
Okay.
So, but of course, the most ominous part of it is, Doug, the people that you bleed over, that you wish would listen, would get it, would understand, they're not going to be ready when it finally hits, when it finally happens. They will not. So that's pretty sad. But what can we do? You know, you try to warn and tell people to take this thing serious. Well,
the time to prepare is not when you see the emergency broadcast signal on the TV screen. That's not when it's time, ladies and gentlemen. The time to prepare is now. The time to prepare is tonight, in the morning, this weekend. The time to prepare is start evaluating things that need to be done now, and most of you are veterans at knowing what you need to do, but unfortunately, there's always an excuse. There's always something that bumps it. There's always a reason that it's not happening. But, Doug, excuses aren't going to work very well, are they, when this thing really gets going? When we look at all of the emergencies that have come and gone, winter emergencies, freezing rain, people having to be stuck in their house for 2 or 3 days, they go to Walmart and they totally strip the shelves. For a freezing rain, a windstorm, or a winter storm, etc., we see what happens. Well, when this real thing gets going, the shelves are going to be empty before the people even arrive. So, ladies and gentlemen, please do not wait. I can't say this enough, but if what is going on in this program does not wake you up, I don't know what will. Because let me move on to the next section, Doug. I want to bring up the next ominous, hidden, in your face. It was a slap in the face, really, what the Illuminati did during the Super Bowl. Now, for those of you that watched it, and Doug, did you happen to see parts of it or made aware of what they did that made everybody cry and they had to get out their Kleenex because they said, oh, this was the best Super Bowl halftime show ever in years because Bruno Mars gave a tribute to the military. How sweet of him. You remember seeing that?
Yeah, I didn't watch it in real time. I watched bits and pieces of the halftime show only. So,
okay. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. So, go ahead and speak as if none of us saw it.
I'm going to share something right here that makes me mad. And veterans and those of you that are enlisted, those of you that have loved ones, I hope that this wakes you up and stirs you the way it has stirred me, because what they did was totally irreverent to our military. Now, on the surface, let me say this to establish what I'm about to say. The Illuminati, the Masons, have stated in their official writings, Manly P. Hall has stated it, and as well as many other Illuminati members and Masonic writers, they have stated openly that symbols are the most important part, or a very, very important part of their religion. Without the symbols, they wouldn't have it. The wisdom is shown through the symbols. So there's always a surface layer of the symbol, and the surface layer is what everyone sees. And the surface layer is what everyone interprets and then forms an opinion, which really is not the truth because it's an illumination. It's a mirage. It's a facade. But on the surface level, during the halftime show, Bruno Mars sang several songs, and then the Red Hot Chili Peppers came on and danced around like a bunch of apes and wild men, Neanderthals. And then when they were finished, the music. A piano started playing, and the music started getting real pretty sounding. There was an introduction of about 30 seconds, and then there were some videos on the Jumbotron, and the people at home saw it. There were shout-outs coming from the military, and several people who are enlisted in the military, I believe there were 7 of them, said hello to their loved ones, and they said, I love you, I miss you, I'll be home soon. Now, Doug, you remember seeing that? Joe? You remember that?
Joe, I think you and I watched that on a YouTube clip. Yes.
Okay. And I looked all over the Internet and scoured it for the past month. Everyone surmised through the surface level that this was a sweet thing for the military. But unfortunately, it was not a sweet thing. What it was a roll call for the people that are going to be involved in the next order of death. Now, let me explain. Every year, the U.S. military uses training exercises here locally, domestically in the lower 48, maybe up in Alaska also, to do flybys and flyovers at sporting events. They do it at football games, college games, professional, baseball, football, NFL, Major League, etc. We've all seen them. They sing the Star-Spangled Banner, and then the F-15s will fly over the stadium. Doug and Joe, right? We've seen that, and everyone gets a tear in their eye and go, oh, wow, I feel patriotic. And they do that on purpose to recruit and for PR purposes, and it's part of the budget for training. Well, at this Super Bowl that we just witnessed, For the first time, they did not use F-15s, F-18s, F-22s, the Blue Angels, none of them. They used helicopters instead. Now, for those of you that might have noticed or remembered, it happened pretty quick, but now get this, Doug. They used 3 Chinook helicopters flying in formation with 3 Black Hawks with 3 Apaches. So there was 3 sets of 3 helicopters that flew over the stadium at the moment that they said, when they got to the very last lines of the Star-Spangled Banner. They flew over, and everyone clapped and cheered and cried, oh, it's a tribute to the military. How beautiful. Okay, hold that thought, all right? Now, first of all, for those of you that are able to peer under the surface, right off the bat, Doug and Joe, we have 3 sets of 3. 3, 3, 3. Total of 9, right. But there's Illuminati all over this. 3, 3, and 3. The pilots, the helicopters, the Chinooks, the equipment that was used to fly over the Super Bowl comes from the 101st Airborne Division. Okay? Now keep that in mind. When the shout-outs happened, the first person to shout out was a lady. Her name was, and I looked at their name tags, and I searched, and I wondered to myself, who are these people? I want to know that they get interviewed after. I could not find it anywhere on the Internet until I was able to actually go to the Department of Defense's photography and video archives, and I found the raw video for the shout-outs. Now, 7 people gave shout-outs while the piano was playing before Bruno Mars started singing the final song. The first person to shout out was a Sergeant Ana Villanueva, and she shouted out, she misses her loved one, she can't wait to be home, she gave a kiss. And then the second person was a Petty Officer Thomas Richards from the Coast Guard. And then he said to his wife he missed her and he'll be home soon. After he was finished, then we had a Captain Jonathan Butler who gave a shout-out, and then there was a Sergeant Daniel Hernandez, and then a Staff Sergeant Henry Davis. I got them written down, so I'm reading them here. And then a Captain Peter Mousseau, and then a Sergeant First Class Ross. Now, as I read their names, I noticed something. I noticed that some of them had the logo, the emblem from the division that they're a part of, and I started to ask myself, who are they a part of? I need to check this out. And then I started to wonder. I was showing my wife, and I said, "What? There's something going on here," because my gut told me there was something going on, Doug. So as I examined where they were from, I was able to piece together something very, very interesting. Now, if you have a pen and paper, you want to take notes, please do this, Doug and Joe, because I'm still trying to decode this, but I believe that there's a huge, huge message in this. Now, the first person that shouted out, Sergeant Ana Villanueva, is stationed at U.S. Marine Corps Forces Europe and Africa. That was the first one. So that's where they're located. Marine Corps Forces Europe and Africa headquarters. The second person was an individual from the Coast Guard, and I asked myself, what in the world is a Coast Guard? I mean, why do you have to say I'll be home soon? The Coast Guard is home, aren't they? I mean, aren't they? And it turns out that this person given the shout-out, Petty Officer Richards, is on board the cutter Sherman that is in the Persian Gulf right now. So apparently our Coast Guard cutters are used to go to the Persian Gulf, and we have one of them that's off the coast of Georgia, and it turns out, Doug, that our Coast Guard ships are being used to do surveillance in the Black Sea right now, and as well as during the Gulf War. They were used and as a part of, I believe, to scope out and to case and to surveil, et cetera, et cetera. So this individual is part of the Coast Guard, and he gave a shout-out. He was the second person. Number 3 was a Captain Jonathan Butler shouting out from Afghanistan. He's part of the 101st Airborne in Afghanistan. Number 4 was a Sergeant Daniel Hernandez. He is also in the Marine Corps Forces headquarters of Europe and Africa. So now that makes 2 of them from the Marine headquarters in Europe. Number 5 was Staff Sergeant Henry Davis, and this person's in Afghanistan, and he is a part of the NATO security mission, operating under the auspices of NATO and the United Nations. Number 6 happens to be Captain Peter Massot. He is stationed also in Afghanistan. He's part of the 101st. And then number 7 is also a first-class lady, first-class, I can't pronounce her first name, Lashana C. Ross, and she is also a part of the 101st. Now, when we tally all of those together, Doug, we're starting to see a picture form. We see 3 enlistees from the 101st Airborne. We had the 101st involved in the flyover at the very beginning.
Right.
So have that on the table for a moment, all right? Now, the Marines headquarters for the Marine Corps Forces Europe and Africa, for those of you that are aware of this, our military is divided into Central Command regions, and we have 6 of them. We have CENTCOM, which is the Middle East. We have NORTHCOM, where we are. SOUTHCOM is South America. And we have EUROCOM for Europe, AFRICOM, and then PACIFICOM for Asia. Well, the headquarters that right now has the maps for the Ukraine spread out on the table and is planning the next war, Doug and Joe, for the Ukraine, is located at Marine Corps Forces Europe and Africa headquarters. That's going to be the head of when we send our boys into the Ukraine for this next war, or whether they're in Poland or Belarus or wherever they end up being fighting the next war, the headquarters, the head is going to, this location is going to play a major role. And I had to ask myself, out of the hundreds and hundreds of bases worldwide to do shout-outs, why did they show that one twice? Okay. I asked that question. I placed it on the table. The second person that did a shout-out was Petty Officer Thomas Richards, who's involved in the Coast Guard. He is stationed in San Diego. So I believe, Doug, let me just say it, I believe every one of these locations, every one of these units, these divisions that were shown in the shout-outs are going to be involved in the coming war in a substantial manner. Now, why would the Coast Guard of San Diego be shown, though, is the big question. Do they know something that's going to happen to the west coast of California is a big question that I have. Are we going to have an attack? Is a missile going to come from the Pacific and land somewhere along there? Is that why the Coast Guard was shown? Or is it simply that they just felt like showing that the Coast Guard is going to be used in the Black Sea as well? So it could play out one of two ways, but I believe this is a substantial hit of what to expect. Now, the 101st, Doug and Joe, for those of you that remember military history, the 101st are usually the first on the ground. They're the airborne. They fly them in. Of course, the 82nd is also involved, but the 101st has played very key roles in every war going back to World War II, as far as you can remember. Now, Doug, can you confirm that? Are we on this?
Yes.
Okay. So the big question I have is, why did they show the 101st over and over? I believe they showed it because the 101st is going to be the ones that are going to be flown in this next war that is coming to the Ukraine, or when it explodes and spreads to Syria. One or the other, the 101st is going to be involved. And they were showing us this. Now, the final person, the fifth person, Staff Sergeant Henry Davis, he is working under the NATO mission established by the UN. NATO, Doug, there it is again, a NATO soldier. Right now, NATO is planning the war with Ukraine. They're working out all the details, the movements, the troops. We're reading about that every day. So they gave us a little hint that NATO is also playing a role in this next war. So when we put this picture together, instead of looking at it as, oh, how sweet, they love the military and how nice of Bruno Mars to give shout-outs, that's not what we saw, ladies and gentlemen. What we saw was an announcement of the cast of characters that are going to be involved in what's going to be coming very, very soon. And, Doug, I don't have a timeline of this, and I'm sure you've had guests or you've had individuals that you've talked to privately that maybe might know. Who knows? But based on the propaganda campaign that's taking place right now and the war of words and the escalations that are occurring, who knows when it could happen. But when it does, then we're going to have the static interrupting the TV program, and the prepare message is then going to be in play. Now, when we start looking at this as one big picture, then it becomes very, very ominous. Ladies and gentlemen, again, the Illuminati did not think that anybody would see this and figure it out. This is not a benign thing of them showing us these different divisions and enlistees. This is it's an in-your-face declaration that they love to gloat about because they didn't think anybody would know what is happening. Now, I want to move on to the next. Before I move on, though, Doug, do you have any comments on this? Or I don't want you to disclose if you've heard things, but
you know what, Nathan? Let me just for the general purposes here. Not too long ago, the London Daily Mail ran an article, Coded Messages in Plain Sight. That was the title of the article. And just in a larger sense, for those people who are listening saying, what in the world are these guys talking about? Folks, I just want to take you back just briefly, kind of as a footnote, if you will, to what Nathan is talking about. Remember when it was disclosed that Barack Hussein Obama had 19.5 million fake Twitter followers? Michelle Obama had 1.9 million fake followers. 33% were false, and so on and so forth. It's interesting. Once you understand what the New World Order is, what the Illuminati is, and how the order or how this agenda is gradually being implemented, and in what manners, what methods of communication, the codings, what we're talking about here, it's all in plain sight. It's progressing. We're seeing this take place, and what, if I may, Nathan, what you're saying is what we're looking at here. While most 99% of the people out there are watching the Super Bowl thinking, okay, this is just a sporting event. What it is really an illuminous type of agenda being played out with a football game that happens to be part of it. You know what I mean? So we're seeing messages here, and the reason we're seeing it is because, of course, they, meaning the people in power, have to let us know, have to warn us what's coming. And of course, the other thing, too, is the significance that they hold within numbers, within sacred, within Illuminati numerology. And you had, Nathan, you had done a wonderful job mentioning the threes and the sets of threes. And one must remember that 3 is the number of royalty. It symbolizes the magical shape of the triangle and the Holy Trinity, which is Nimrod, Semiramis, Thomas, or Osiris, Isis, Horus, or whatever, Satan, and so on. So in the larger sense, folks, this is what Nathan, I believe, and Nathan, you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, this is what we're looking at in the larger sense. So in the context of what we're talking about, this is the backdrop, the context, the venue in what we're saying. Is that fair?
Indeed. Thank you for commenting. And I also plan to continue this information. I'm going to go to it in even further detail, and I'm going to continue to dig at. By the way, I don't know how long it's going to be up. My index page is coming up now, finally. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to go to my website, I have the link for this show, Doug, and it says notes and images that people can use for reference. So if they click on that, then they can see what I'm talking about. I mentioned that I found prepare 22 times. One of the times that I found it was actually spoken by one of the announcers right before the halftime. When they got to the 2-minute warning, the announcer said, "We have reached the 2-minute warning. We'll be right back." So they went to a commercial break, and immediately the music started, and then the voice from the commercial said, "This Super Bowl has been brought to you by Maserati. We are prepared. Now we strike." So that was one. I count that in my tally of one of the times it was mentioned, because I find it interesting where they place that. At the 2-minute warning of the halftime, we are prepared. Now we strike. And when I look at the script of the New World Order, Doug, and we look at when this mess started, now I'm sure a lot of people would argue and probably want to say, well, didn't it start
at 9/11, or didn't it start at here or there? Did it start at the 2008 crash? And so there's a lot of places that we could say that it started. But as far as the big turnaround where America started deflating and melting and wilting, and when it was obvious that there is a battle against America, the destruction of our economy, etc., that started in the crash of 2008. And here we are 5.5 years, almost 6 years later. So I believe, or at this point in my research, this is what I'm summarizing. Maybe I could be wrong, and it's always up for adjustment. But at this point in my evaluation, it appears that we are at the halftime mark. And when I look at what they said during the Super Bowl, we are at the 2-minute warning, and then they say we are prepared, now we strike. If we were to look at a timeline and we could see 2008 as the beginning, and then we see the halftime, which is now, 2014, and then we move forward, the goal at the end of this 4-quarter game, if you want to call it a game, is going to be the New World Order rising up out of the ashes, because the Olympic ceremony showed that the phoenix is going to rise out of the flames. So before the New World Order phoenix rises up, there has to be flames. In order to have flames, you have to have fuel to burn, and the things to burn is going to be nations, cities, houses, buildings, infrastructure. Our stuff is going to burn, ladies and gentlemen. And so in order to bring about a new financial system and a new political system, a one world system, they have to implode the old world system. So between now and when the New World Order rises, things have to happen. We have to have a war, according to them. So, Doug and Joe, when I'm looking at the timeline and with what they said, it does appear that we're at the halftime mark. And how interesting is it that, was it a coincidence that they said that? We're at the 2-minute warning, halftime, we're prepared, now we strike. So based on what I'm able to surmise on my research and what I believe the Holy Spirit has shown me, also looking at Scripture, and also with the conversation with others who are watchmen, and also based on the research that others have done, when we look at the huge picture, the painting starts to form. The photograph begins to form. The canvas has the images forming that we're at the halftime mark. So from the beginning to now, they needed the implosion of the economy. They needed to have the fascist corporation, the fascist corporate government control to be put in place. That's happened. We have had all of the industries of America become fascist under Obama's control. Now healthcare is happening. It's happening in every avenue. So now that that's done, and Hitler did the same thing, by the way. He got all the fascism infrastructure in line, and then he started with the war machine. So that's next. So now that we're at the halfway point, the war machine is about to get started, ladies and gentlemen. And the message that they gave us was they are now prepared for this. So now they're going to strike. By the way, when they're prepared, they're going to push the button. They're going to light the fuse. They're going to hit the ignition. They're going to turn the key to strike. We, the citizens, the civilians, are going to have to prepare by our own means to be able to weather and endure what's coming. They are prepared to do the attack. So we have the preparation message in two avenues. The people need to prepare, but they're preparing with the war machine. So when we see the third prepare happen, when the children were singing it on the field, that means we can also translate that to signify the people behind the scenes that are preparing their strike mechanism. And so where are we in the timeline? This is what I believe, Doug and Joe. We're at the moment where they are now prepared to push the button for the war machine to come. And when the war machine comes, there needs to be a desired outcome. And the desired outcome can only have one thing. The old world needs to be destroyed, and the old world was powered and fueled by the United States of America. America must go down several notches. The middle class must be destroyed, and we're going to get to the point where Appalachia is going to be spread across the entire country, where potholes are a normal thing, where the maintenance from the street crew of cities will no longer be around, where the lights will no longer be on at night. The budgets of cities are going to be destroyed. This thing is going to turn us into those third world countries when, over the past few decades, we'd go on vacation to buy trinkets for a low price. Well, America is going to become that new place. They need this to happen. Now, during the Super Bowl, there were two other places where they stated that this was going to happen. And I'm going to mention them right now. First of all, Bud Light had several commercials. But one of them was weird, and for those of you that can remember, Arnold Schwarzenegger was paid $3 million to be a part of this commercial. Doug and Joe, do you remember that one, or did you see it? He wore this wig, and you saw it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. What in the world was that? Out of the many commercials, the 50 commercials that I saw during the Super Bowl, 3 of them stand out as being very, very ominous and very telling and full and populated with Illuminati symbolism, and that's one of them. The Bud Light one was one. The Maserati one, We're Prepared Now We Strike, is one. And then, of course, the Jag commercial is one. The Arnold character that he played, for the people that are watching, they're going, man, that's just silly. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with this commercial, it starts out with this person sitting in a bar, and this girl comes up to him, and she says, if I give you this Bud Light, are you up for whatever happens? And he goes, sure. So she takes him, leaves the bar, and they get into a limo that is waiting, and they're filming this the whole time, and the limo takes him to this building where he gets in the elevator, goes to this party, but before he gets in the elevator, he sees Don Cheadle, who has a llama with him, and they get into the elevator, and then they get to a party for a while, and then after they're done with that party, they leave, and they come back down where Arnold is waiting for him, and they play ping pong. They play for a few seconds, a few moments, and then one of the walls falls down, and there's a band playing on the stage, and then the commercial's over. Now, for the person looking at that would say, so, Nathan, big deal. Who cares? Well, here's the reason it's a big deal. Because I did some background checking, Doug, on the owners of Bud Light and the owners of Maserati and the owners of Jaguar. And it turns out that the machine to destroy America is well in play. Bud Light, over the last few years, of course, Bud Light is owned by Budweiser. Over the last several years, a group of 3 Brazilian billionaires got together, and they named their financial group 3G. And the head leader of these billionaires, his name is Jorge Paulo Lemann, Lemann, and his first name is Jorge. He's a billionaire. He's the richest man in Brazil, and he did a hostile takeover of Anheuser-Busch, and he bought it. So he's now in control of Budweiser. Brazil is a BRIC nation member. The BRIC nations are BRICS. For most of the audience knows this, but for those that don't, the B is Brazil, the R is Russia, the I is India, and then you have China and South Africa. The BRIC nations are going to dump the dollar and destroy the American economy, and they're working on it right now. Well, the BRIC nation billionaires right now are in America at the fire sale, and they're buying up everything in America for fire sale prices or for hostile corporate takeover through mechanisms. Now, the 3 Brazilians that bought Bud Light are now in control of Budweiser. A few years ago, they also bought Burger King through a hostile takeover. They also did a hostile takeover of Heinz ketchup. For those of you, it's these same Brazilians. So they are very aggressive. They bought Anheuser-Busch, fired all the middle management, fired all the white guys, and repopulated the board with Brazilians. And it's a takeover of aliens and strangers who do not speak English that are taking over everything America. So they're the ones behind the Bud Light commercial. When the gentleman in the commercial, in the Bud Light commercial, walks into the room where Arnold is waiting for him, Arnold says, prepare to be crushed. That's the first thing out of his mouth. So I listened to that, and then a grin comes on his face, and he says, in tiny tennis. So they play ping pong, and then the wall falls over, and the band's on the other side. But that was another notable prepare symbolic statement. Prepare to be crushed. When we look at the big picture, the Brazilians own Budweiser. Prepare to be crushed. We are seeing a financial war that's taking place, but it's not limited to just the financial has-been of America's wealth. It's also going to involve actual war, because when the gentleman walks in and he's talking to Arnold, Arnold says, show me your muscles, and the guy flexes and he goes, nah, you don't have good muscles. Drop down and give me 5. And the guy goes, I don't want to give you 5. And Arnold goes, no, you have to. And the guy goes, when I get on the ground, you're going to start the game and score on me when I'm on the ground. And Arnold goes, no, I won't. So the guy gets on the ground and starts doing push-ups, and then Arnold, he serves it, and of course makes 1 point, and he says, I got 1 point, and they give him the point. And the guy stands up and goes, I knew it. And so they play back and forth the volleys, and while it may appear cute to most of the people watching, Doug, this thing had huge symbolism. Number 1, the number 5 is consistently being mentioned throughout the Super Bowl, in commercials. Arnold says, drop down and give me 5. 5 is the key number for the Illuminati. The 5 points of their pentagram. There are 5 original members of the Illuminati. I could go on and on. I showed that on your previous program. But also, while we look at the surface level, it's cute, but when we look behind the scenes, below the surface level, what do we have? We have the young guy warming up, doing push-ups. He's practicing with push-ups. Right now, in the Ukraine and the Black Sea, they're doing war games. They're going to be doing war games in Poland, and eventually, while someone's doing the practicing and their push-ups, the volley is going to be thrown out while the other person's practicing. So while the person is doing push-ups, Arnold volleys his little ping pong ball and starts the match. So the war is going to start out of the blue, unexpectedly. There's a lot of hidden symbolism here, and I plan to go deep into this when I do my program, because the other things that I just mentioned, I don't have time to go into them very deeply. The llama is a huge thing. The name of the llama is Lily, and I'll talk about that on my program later. But when they first go to a party and they go into this room, when the gentleman has his date with him, everybody in the room is a twin. And if you go to YouTube, there's about 4, or maybe even 5 or 10 different videos that have been placed by Bud Light on the sequence of this event that happened. And everyone is a twin, and the person even says that, wow, everyone here is a twin. And when he's in the elevator, the date that he has, her sister walks in, and he goes, oh, twins. And when he gets out of the elevator, he notices that the jacket they gave him to wear is the same one being worn by Don Cheadle. So what we have in the twin symbolism is 1 and 1. You have the Twin Towers, and the Illuminati and to the Masons, twins are very, very significant when you look at their symbolism. They even have one schism where you have 2 snakes that are going up a pole, and the 2 snakes are side by side, and they represent the mirror image of each other. So, and you have the yin and yang. So it goes very deep, and I don't want to digress with that. But the bottom line that I'm trying to communicate here, Doug, is that commercial had a prepare message by Arnold, prepare to be crushed. After the match was over, he said the Nathan, first one to 5 points.
If I can just interrupt here, just briefly here. Folks, if you want to understand a little bit more about this, because I didn't quite get the connection with the give me 5 and the number 5. Folks, search the Illuminati Law of Fives. It goes back to Weishaupt, Adam Weishaupt, who produced the Law of Fives. His inner council was structured around the pentagram, and that should give you an idea of what Nathan is referencing with respect to the Law of Fives. I didn't want to derail you, Nathan, but I thought that was an important interjection there. So go ahead.
I appreciate it. That's good. Thank you. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to talk about this on my program in the future, but for right now I'm going to move on to the final prepare. And this one, Doug, I find chilling, because if this one plays out as I saw, then we're going to have a very interesting future coming. During the Super Bowl, a commercial came up for the Transformers movie, and There was not a lot of verbiage. It showed Mark Wahlberg doing his thing, running around, trying to escape the robots. But while they were showing clips from the movie that's coming, the words "prepare" appeared on the screen, and then it went away, and they showed more robots, and then it said "for extinction." And then the commercial, it was a 30-second commercial. It was done, but that's for the Transformers. I believe this is part 4, I think, and it's Transformers: Age of Extinction. So even right there, Doug, Age of Extinction. But an extinction event means that a lot of people perish, a lot of people die, and it also means that something comes from another world, possibly, or maybe from within this world, or maybe it's rogue elements that cause the extinction. Nevertheless, the Illuminati, the New World Order, and in many of their writings, and this is old school. Those of you that are regular listeners that have been at this for a while, you know they want to depopulate this world and get it down to a figure that they can deal with. 500,000 people, I believe, the Georgia Stones. An extinction event is always something that they love to do during war. The New World Order loves to have war because it depopulates the planet. They love plagues and pestilences because it depopulates the planet. And right now we have an interesting story that seems to be a side note, or it's on page 3 or page 4 of the news usually, but that Ebola thing that's in Africa and it's slowly spreading. I have to scratch my head and wonder if that's one of the creations of the mad scientists, at their labs where they like to dig up dead bodies from the Spanish flu and then infect people with them to see what's going to happen. Well, we see in the book of Revelation that pestilence is going to be one of the judgments on the planet, and a lot of people are going to die from disease. So already that's a part of end-time prophecy. In addition to that, we have the threat of Revelation also talks about the flaming mountain that's going to hit the sea, the meteor or comet or however it will play out. But in this trailer for Transformers, these creatures, these robots are from another planet, and they're coming, and they're going to cause an extinction event. So Doug and Joe, the jury is open for the conclusion of how the extinction is going to happen, but based on the MO of these evil minions that operate behind the scenes and in the alleyways and in the basements and in the dungeons of the world, they have something cooked up and something that they're working on right now that's going to be used to bring massive death, calamity. And I don't know at this point what it's going to be, but since it was broadcasted during the Super Bowl, prepare for extinction, it could be a combination of various things. It could involve war. It could be pestilence, plague, etc. So I wanted to bring that up because I know that there are some people that are studying that, and some people have been talking about some events that possibly could play a role in our future involving near-Earth objects as well, things coming from outer space that could land on Earth, etc. I believe Augusto Perez was on your show a few months ago talking about that meteor or asteroid that could hit the Caribbean at some point in the future. So I don't know, or could it be the Yellowstone caldera going off? I don't know, but an extinction event could happen, and since they have their little toy that they love to play with located in Alaska, HAARP, where they can turn up the power in the ionosphere and cause earthquakes, which is a whole other program, we don't know all the plans that they have, but at some point, Doug, it's going to play out. All the preparers that were displayed at the Super Bowl will play out in the emergency broadcast message that's going to interrupt our day at some point in the future. So that part needs to be made very clear. The Brazilian guy that I mentioned that bought Budweiser also has an accomplice. Now, when I mentioned the BRIC nations, I mentioned Brazil. Jaguar, it turns out, is not owned by a British company. It is owned by a company from India. A very wealthy family bought it. So it's also another, Tata Motors owns it, and it's owned by another BRIC nation company. Now, I find it interesting. Jag hasn't done many commercials. In fact, I don't know if they've ever done a Super Bowl commercial. but they did it here to give a very ominous message. So the BRIC nations, Doug, are letting us know that very, very ominous events are going to be approaching this planet. And the Jag commercial, as I stated, there are three very ominous commercials: the Maserati, the Jag, and the Arnold Schwarzenegger Bud Light commercial. The Maserati commercial, I'm going to also make a program on this, and it would take a whole hour to talk about the Maserati commercial, but it seems that most people notice what happened at the end. You know, the trident shows up. We are prepared, now we strike. I believe, Joe, you played that last time I was on.
Yeah.
The little girl's talking. By the way, it's a girl. I thought it was a boy, but it's a girl talking. That commercial is full of Illuminati symbolism. It's so populated. It's amazing, gentlemen. It's amazing because it starts out with the tsunami, of course, and that one's self-explanatory, a tsunami of judgment. And then you have the tornado, and then it shows the ravens, the birds flying in the air over the power lines. But then after that, it starts showing what appear to be just random frames of video. It shows people working and ballet and people dancing, etc. And then it ends with "Now we strike." The girl says that. Well, that girl, within a few seconds of the commercial starting, they show her inside of her bedroom. And in her bedroom are hanging a little craft item that are made by children. And this craft item comes from some Native American folklore art, but it's called the Eye of God, the God's Eye. And you take two sticks and make a cross, and then you weave. You go further and further out until you have this little design, and it looks like a circle in the middle, and it's called the Eye of God. Doug and Joe, are you familiar with that craft item? It looks like one of those dream catchers.
Yeah.
Okay, well, in the Maserati commercial, she has two windows in her bedroom, and each window has three of them hanging. The Eye of God. Now, to the Illuminati, the eye is the eye of providence, the eye of mysteries, the eye of enlightenment, the eye of initiation, or, in layman's term, the eye of Satan, the eye of Lucifer. So the eye is very, very telling. As the commercial moves on, it shows a man putting out a fire, a fireman, wearing his fire outfit and his helmet, and the number 36 is on his helmet. Now, to the Illuminati and to Satanists, to pagans, to the occult, the number 36 is a translated number, and it represents the mark of the beast. Because the number 36, you can add up every integer between 1 and 36 together, and it adds up to 666. The Babylonians knew about this, the Egyptians, the Mesopotamians. They even made little amulets that had six squares in rows of 6, so they had 6 going across and 6 down. These are little amulets, and they had numbers 1 through 36 in these amulets, and they called it the magic square, and it added and it totaled up to 666, all the way back to the Babylonians. So 36 is, to them, very sacred. Well, the Maserati commercial, the fireman is wearing 36. Why is he doing that, Doug? Why is he wearing the number of the beast putting out a fire? Interesting.
If I can interject this, the number 36 translates or reduces to 9, which is the number of divine completion and the number of the fall of man. Just another angle, if you will, on this, but let's go with what you're saying. Yeah, why?
Well, it has a lot of layers, exactly, and they do that on purpose. They intentionally want a lot of layers, a lot of sub-layers, subgroups, etc. It goes down so far to them, and it's supposed to, it's meant to. So, again, why did they name it that? I wondered about it, and I Googled Fireman 36, and when I do my research, Doug, it takes hours and hours. I've been at this for so long. But I asked myself, why Fireman 36? And interesting, I didn't know this. John Kerry, his nickname is the Fireman. I don't know who nicknamed him the Fireman, but he is nicknamed the Fireman. And I was wondering, does that have anything to do with him or his antics? But I see what time it is. We're at the top of the hour. Do you want me to continue or you want to stop until the other side?
No, this would be a good time to take a break, Nathan, and I want to let you know your website is back up. I want to thank the people for sending me the information that the website was working again. And with that, we'll go to the break right now and pick up right where we left off on the other side. Folks, you're listening to the Hagman and Hagman Report on this Thursday, April 3rd, 2014. We'll be right back after these short messages. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the third and final hour of this Hagman and Hagman Report on this Thursday, April 3rd, 2014, with our very special guest, Nathan Leal. His website is watchmanscry.com. Bookmark that site, as there are plenty of excellent teachings, not only on what we're talking about tonight with the message hidden in the Super Bowl halftime show, but other great messages, as well as the Overcomer series is one that Nathan's been working on that I've listened to, and it is fantastic. But keep this site bookmarked, watchmanscry.com, and you will get a lot of great information and insight from Nathan and from any media appearances and things he's working on. With that, Nathan, I want to bring you back, and where we left off was talking about the different commercials, from the Maserati commercial to Arnold Schwarzenegger to the Jaguar commercial.
Yes, and I believe we were talking about the Jag. It has a lot of... I plan to go into that in an upcoming program, but the bottom line of the Maserati one was there are ominous events that are approaching this planet, not only involved with the trident and that we have to get prepared, but it starts out showing glimpses of what the watchmen have actually been seen with the tsunamis and the storms, the tornadoes, and the darkness that's coming, and it shows the ravenous birds. So there's a spiritual element to this, and ladies and gentlemen, for those of you listening, thinking that, well, that's a nice little scholarly waste of time that Nathan's doing, I don't see the point. Well, here's the point and the bottom line, and it has to do with what time it is. It has to do with the things that are approaching this planet, and because these things are approaching this planet, they are going to affect every one of us. We will all participate. I always say this on my programs. Everyone gets to participate. No one gets a free ride. No one gets a free pass. And everyone's going to get their turn experiencing some things that are unpleasant. This means that loved ones, our loved ones, are also going to go through some events that we're not going to like. So as those who are the head of the house, if you're a father or a mother, it is your biblical and Christian responsibility to be the priest. If you're the father, you're to be the head of the spiritual head. If the father's gone, then mom, it's your job to be the spiritual leader for your family, for your kids. So we need to aim higher, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot continue going down the road of flakiness, Flakyville, flaky Christianity, in and out, hypocritical, God, I'm sorry, I keep doing this, I keep stumbling, I never have victory. And Doug, how many people have that as their testimony? They never can get past level 1 or 2 or grade school of Christianity because they're always mired in the mess. And if individuals were willing to take inventory and to look around and look down at their feet and see what they're stepping in, and then look around at the setting of their house to see what they're participating in, to see what's part of their life, their lifestyle that's accepted, tolerated, and admired, and even wanted or desired, they would see that we are the sum. Our spiritual walk is the sum total of our spiritual investment. So, ladies and gentlemen, aside from what I'm saying right here, yeah, it's symbolism and it's about these people who are not Christians, and we're saying that they have a plan, and some people might say, well, I don't care, I'm not interested in that. But the bottom line is their plan is going to be allowed to take over this planet and change things. And as it gets rolling, as it continues, it's going to grow in its strength, in its momentum, in its power, in its size, to the point where it's going to become an overwhelming fog. It's going to be hard to spiritually breathe. And Doug and Joe, this is the thing that I think if people really, really knew how dark it was going to get in the future and how stifling that darkness was going to cause it to be, if people knew how difficult it's going to be to be able to walk in victory because the darkness is coming, they would be doing their spiritual homework right now. What do I mean by that? This is what I mean. In times of blessing over a nation, God has his hand of blessing and everything prospers. things go smoothly, and God restrains the evil from that nation. So the atmosphere is easy for a Christian. When they go to church, the heavens are not brass. They pray. The transmission works. When God judges a nation because they're evil, God pulls back his restraining hand or moves it out of the way so that then the flood of evil can come through. And when the evil comes through, it's much more difficult to pray through. The heavens are brass for more people. It's more difficult for people to hear God's voice because that's just the atmosphere that's in the air. And that darkness, Doug, is coming over America right now. It's becoming more difficult for people to walk in victory because of that darkness. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're noticing that it's harder for you to hear from God or break through or get through when you're doing your devotions or praying, this is not an accident. This is happening on a countrywide level. And even in other countries it's happening. I've spoken to other watchmen who have reported to me that they are hearing from a lot of individuals that this is so. This is happening. So we're not just talking about preparing with guns and butter. We're talking about getting prepared spiritually, Joe and Doug. And the Bible tells us in Matthew 24 that unless the days were shortened, no one would be saved. It's going to become more and more difficult because one of the hardest challenges it's going to be on this planet in our future is going to be deception. The darkness coupled with deception. The deception is going to be so clever. It's going to have a way of disarming the Christian that wants to be vigilant, and it's going to have a way of being able to lie and get through in thought patterns, and the war is going to take place in the mind, ladies and gentlemen, in your soul. And the methods of Satan are being placed in today's infrastructure to be able to do that successfully. And the methods of Satan are not only spiritual, they start out in the physical realm and then they go into the soulless realm of our emotions and our minds. That happens through entertainment, through what is offered to the world in the venues of Hollywood and music and the social media. So, Doug and Joe, it's going to take a person that really wants to make it. If someone takes it lightly, they're not going to survive. The Bible tells us in the end times there's going to be a great deception. 1 Timothy 4:1 and 2 Timothy 4:3 state this. And I want to read these two verses. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're taking notes, make note of these verses. Because if you are a Christian and you want to be a person that is able to endure, I've talked about being an overcomer in my programs and my sermons. To endure means you know the enemy, and you know that it's there. You know that the darkness is there. 1 Timothy 4:1 says, "Now the Spirit speaks expressly that in the latter times, the end times, some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils." Now, that verse stated several things. The first thing it said was people who at one time were Christians who had faith are going to walk away. They will depart. So, Doug and Joe, the worst time to be leaving God and your faith is when it's dark and when we need Him, when we need His help and His providence, His provision, His guidance, His counsel. We cannot walk away from Him because to step out of the will of God is to step into nowhere. Now, ladies and gentlemen, think about that, please. To step out of your faith, step away from your faith, is to step into nowhere. To step away from your relationship with God is to step into nowhere. So if you're mad at God for whatever reason, because you're going through a trial and things are just working against you, the tide is against you, there's contrary winds that seem to be always against you at this point in time, well, ladies and gentlemen, those are trials of faith. And in order for us to have victory, in order for us to have a testimony that we were able to endure the trial of faith, we need to be in the boat, and the winds need to be contrary. We need to be in a storm, and we need to have victory. We need to be able to make it. We need to be able to say, I endured, and I waited for God, and He showed up. So, Doug and Joe, right now for the many listeners out there, if they are not becoming allied with God, they're not going to make it, first of all. It's impossible. For those that are on the fence and they're wavering in their faith, my friend, come back to the side of the pasture of God and don't go on the other side. On the other side is darkness. It's barren. It's a wasteland of desolation of Babylon. You will not survive out in Babylon without faith. Now, the verse goes on to say, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. What does that mean? That means that the seducing that's going to take place in the end times starts in the netherworld. It starts in some underworld, invisible meeting taking place in pandemonium, in hell's offices. It's taking place in the castle of Satan, where they are coming up with their plan, and then they send out the forces of evil, the disembodied spirits, the demonic powers and minions to go forth on the surface of the earth to seduce. And the seduction is then takes place through a process of, it starts at the top. For example, I mentioned Tavistock, I mentioned the Illuminati, I mentioned the evil political drones that are taking us to the New World Order. Those people have been infiltrated with demons. So when you look at the talking heads, and they're trying to have an argument that sounds wrong, they're being influenced with seducing spirits. And this happens every day with the media, the talking heads on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. All those people are under the spell of seducing spirits. Also...
Nathan, if I can just interject this here, because I think when I did this before, I think there was some audio breakup here. You mentioned the Tavistock Institute in the context in which you're talking about the war between good and evil, and the earthly war versus spiritual war, and how this all is combined. I just want to reiterate about the Tavistock Institute, folks. It's so important for everyone to understand. The Tavistock Institute, this independent, not-for-profit organization combining research in the social sciences with professional practice. The issue here, and we can see this at play right now, the Tavistock Institute is so important. It's headquartered in London. It's iconic prophet, if you will, Sigmund Freud. In fact, there's a statue of Freud outside of the Tavistock Institute in London. But the personnel of the various corporations here in this country, in America, as well as worldwide, are required to undergo some sort of indoctrination at one or more of the Tavistock-controlled institutions. A network of secret groups such as the Trilateral Commission and the Club of Rome, they're all conduit for instructions to the Tavistock network. The Tavistock Institute developed the mass brainwashing techniques which were first used experimentally back in the Korean War era, okay? And Manchurian Candidate, if you've ever watched that original movie, you get an idea of what the Tavistock Institute is all about. And I believe what Nathan Leal is talking about here, and he's done a lot of research on this, is this practical application against all of us using this earthly realm or this brick and mortar type of institute as a conduit for the evil machinations of the New World Order people. Is that about right, Nathan?
That's brilliant. Thank you, Doug.
Okay.
And I want to say for those that want to further investigate this, there's a book that was written exposing them. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have a pen and paper, you can go to Amazon.com and get it. It's called The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. That's the name of it. Written by Dr. John Coleman. And he exposes them.
Yep.
And he also wrote a book about the Committee of 300 that's very telling. So go to...
It's all part of it.
It's fascinating.
Nathan, you have, and I've got to say this, you have really struck at the heart, at least in my view, you've struck at the heart and soul of what we're really undergoing here and the players. People always say, well, who's involved? You talk about they. Who are they? Well, we just gave you a big they, and you can connect the dots from there. So you talk about brilliant. You've done some brilliant research, Nathan. And Dr. John Coleman is, I've got his book on the Committee of 300 as well as his white paper on the Tavistock Institute. So important. And once people, folks, once you understand how and who, and Nathan's giving you the why, and we give you the why, you'll have an idea of really what's going on here. And so when you're talking to a neighbor perhaps or a family member about the Super Bowl and they look at you like you're absolutely out of your mind, well, here it is. Here's information that can better explain or help you, as you, the listener, being a conduit of information and education. This is all information that you can use. And Nathan, I want to thank you so much for bringing that up and for your research into this. But go ahead.
Well, according to Dr. Coleman's research, for those that are wondering where they're involved and where their tentacles are, let me just read a portion of what he says right here. He says in the United States, the Tavistock Institute has virtually taken over MIT, Stanford Research, the Salem Institute, Wharton School of Economics, Hudson Institute, Kissinger Associates, Duke University, the RAND Research and Development Corporation, and you see them sponsoring a lot of different. I remember them on PBS, Sesame Street. Sesame Street is brought to you by the RAND Corporation. I was wondering who are they? Well, they're at Tavistock, one of their tentacles, as well as Georgetown University. They have used their infrastructure there to further their studies. So this thing spreads out all over like a fungus across America, across different industries, academia, politics, and you are exactly right, Doug, when you said that every candidate that is ever offered, they go through an intensive screening process to find out if they're able to be modified by the scientists at Tavistock, and the ones that are pliable are found to be easily puffed, quote unquote. That's what Dr. Coleman called it. So all the people that when we see a new announcement, oh wow, maybe he's going to finally turn this around and heal the country, the left-right paradigm, all of that is a bunch of theater. It's window dressing, and we're about to go through that again very soon. And I wonder, Doug, the American public has such short memories and attention spans, and you can have these politicians involved in scandal, and then 2 years later they have been washed lily white, and then all of a sudden they're the candidate of choice, etc. I've heard Jeb Bush is being talked about, and the Bush dynasty has already revealed itself as being responsible for how many millions of dead civilians in the Middle East, and now they're about to throw in another Bush in the container, or maybe they're going to give us Mr. Governor Christie, the guy who basically humps Obama every time Obama gets out of the plane and shows up in New Jersey. I mean, those images are pathetic, but he's supposed to be one of the choices, maybe, or who else are they going to give us? Every one of them is going to be an individual that is pliable and can be molded to their liking. So there is no saving through the political. Well, we know what they did with Ron Paul. We saw the election and how they stopped his gains and how they would underreport the numbers and how the pie chart wouldn't even show what the true numbers were. And it's full of theater, it's full of lies, and right now we're watching continual theater from the news media. Any story that we see from any of the main news reporting sources is an automatic fabrication. And
exactly.
Doug, I wanted to say, this is off the subject, but one thing that I wanted to point out, and we didn't even talk about that shooting yesterday, and I haven't done enough digging, and I don't want to sidetrack too much, but I have noticed that when a major event happens, like a shooting, that usually the news reports that come out within the first 30 minutes, maybe an hour, but usually it's within the first 30 minutes to an hour, are usually scrubbed the next day, or they're forgotten, or they're no longer remembered. And I believe the reason that happens is because the reporters accidentally say what they're not supposed to say, and then it gets scrubbed from the official story. Because have you noticed the missing plane? Right, the story now is that it did a weird turn and went to the south, to the west, to the left, and at first we were hearing about how it was up at 45,000 feet, but that part's been scrubbed now. Have you noticed that? And now there's a whole new way of how it played out. So that thing's getting spray painted right now. I have suspicions. Now, I'm not prophesying, ladies and gentlemen, but I have suspicions, Doug, that thing's getting spray painted, and it's going to be filled up with some cargo that's precious to someone, and it's going to be used to change the course of history possibly. So, just for the record, just keep that on the table.
Interesting. Yeah, I've you know what, Nathan, we've heard so many theories about this, or so much speculation. How do you make a plane, or how does a plane of that size disappear in this day and age with the satellites and the technology that we have? Just because, for example, someone turns off a transponder, and I know you don't want to go down this road too far, but we've got radar, we've got satellites, we've got other assets, engineered assets that can track everything. So to say, I believe this, Nathan, just for anyone to believe, for example, that they don't know what happened here to this plane, somebody's lying. I mean, there are lies being told about this. It's just, when is this going to reappear, or what's the final chapter going to be about this? That's my question.
Exactly.
And very interesting observation or speculation with respect to your analysis of this. And again, you're right not to go into.
I want to finish off. I see we got about 30 minutes. I want to talk about the Jag commercial.
Perfect.
This one, and I'm sorry that I wasn't able to put the images. I had some great images. I took screen captures of the commercial itself. But ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know about it, you can go to YouTube or just Google it goes by several names: Jaguar Super Bowl commercial, or Rendezvous, or Good to Be Bad. It goes by those three names. But Joe, do you still have the audio soundbite of it?
Yes, I do. You want me to play it?
Yeah, can we go ahead and play it? Because I want to finish up decoding this thing.
Sure, here we go.
Have you ever noticed how in Hollywood movies all the villains are played by Brits?
Maybe we just sound right.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mary.
We're more focused, more precise.
We're always one step ahead.
With a certain style, an eye for detail.
And we're obsessed by power.
Stiff upper lip is key.
And we all drive Jaguars.
Oh, yes. It's good to be bad.
Okay. Now, I believe most of the audience by now has seen that commercial, Doug. I wanted to break down this commercial because this one has Illuminati, Freemason, in-your-face boasting all over it, and it basically has the complete template of their scheme, and it's right in our face. So let's start at the very beginning. It starts with Ben Kingsley saying, have you ever noticed how in Hollywood movies all the villains are played by Brits? Ben Kingsley is inside a room that has a lot of projections on the wall, and in the ceiling there's a helicopter flying up, and on each of the four walls there are images of cameras that are filming things happening outside of his room. So right there, it's showing that he has eyes on everything. He's watching everything, and he sees the helicopter taking off. His agents, his other minions, the other people part of his scheme have cameras on them, so he always has eyes on his partners and his colleagues. So Ben Kingsley starts out saying the villains are played by Brits. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, let me say this for the record. There is always a surface layer, always. But according to the Freemasons, that's just for facade. It's window dressing. And the people that don't get it, well, that's all they'll see is the surface. So on the surface, this commercial is cool. Let me just say, it looks fun. Wow, they really did a good production, and I believe it's a director named Hooper that did it. He's a Hollywood director. But it was done very professionally, and it gets your attention. But that's the surface. when we start peeling the surface out of the way and looking under the hood and then going down the rabbit trail, there are tunnels that begin to form where we start to see things that are no longer just benign and innocent. After he says the villains are played by Brits, the scene changes to the tarmac of an airport, and it shows a Learjet landing, and a gentleman gets out of the plane. That gentleman is another British actor his name is Mark Strong. He walks out of the plane, and he walks right by the camera, and he says, maybe we just sound right. Every word that they say in this commercial is key, is pivotal, it's important. So when he says maybe we just sound right, if you're taking notes and if you just write that down, number one, sounds right. Doug and Joe, the Tavistock Institute that comes from London, by the way, from the Brits, their job is to make things sound right. Their job is to mimic the innocent sounds of a child, or the innocent sounds of a nursing mother, or the innocent sounds of someone that's noble or has good things with good buzzwords, and it's all clean and fresh. That's their job, is to make it, quote unquote, sound right. So right out of the gate, they're saying maybe we just sound right is the reason that we're the Brits, but that speaks volumes. They sound right. I read a verse a moment ago from 1 Timothy 4:1. It says, the Spirit says, in the last days, people will depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Why? Because it sounds right. So the minions of hell are behind making the New World Order and the machine of the New World Order sound right. So for the people that would argue, what's so bad about it? It's not that bad, or well, number one, ladies and gentlemen, we have to have our radar of discernment always on, starting right now. We have to. It is a must. So please think about that and write that. If you're taking those, discernment will know, even though it sounds right, it's not going to lead you astray. Because, Doug, vaccines sound right, don't they? The words from FEMA sound right. Everyone come and register here and get our water, and we'll, or you got to do this or that. It sounds right. At public schools, what they tell the kids sounds right, but it's the Common Core deception and lie that they're re-educating our students of today to be basically dumbed down, unthinking minions and slaves. So because something sounds right does not mean that it is right. Okay, so as we move on, Mark Strong gets out of the jet and walks up to a lady that is standing on the tarmac. And she has a set of keys in her hand, and she holds them and hands them to him. And he takes them. And he says, thank you, Mary. And he gets in his jacket and he takes off. Now, I want to stop right there. At the very end of days, in the book of Revelation, the Bible tells us, in Revelation 12, that Satan is going to be tossed from heaven and woe unto the earth because he has a short time. He comes from the sky. And we also see in Revelation 9 that there's another exchange that happens to the powers of darkness where they are giving the keys to the bottomless pit. So they come from heaven, they come from the second heaven, from the other dimension to get the keys. Let me back up. In this commercial, Mark Strong, the villain, gets out of the jet from the sky, and he is handed keys. And he says, thank you, Mary. Now, the Illuminati is working, and I don't want to digress with this. This could probably offend people and start arguments, but we don't have to go very far. All we got to do is look at their outfits and their costumes. The Pope is full of Illuminati symbology in his outfit. Would we not agree, Doug? The Catholic Church has Illuminati symbolism. They got that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nathan, I know Joe saw something in that very commercial. I don't want to disrupt your train of thought, but I think it's important. I don't know whether you've addressed this, will address it, or... Yeah,
let him keep going because it's further in the commercial.
Okay, go ahead then, Nathan. But yes, I agree.
Okay. The Knights Templar, I mean, we know that they're immersed together. The pool is big, it's thick, there's a lot of tentacles to the end-time beast, and it consists of a lot of different groups. Some are religious, some are academic, some are political, etc. But we do have the religious element in the end times that's going to be a part of the Great Deception. And at some point, we're going to have the false, quote-unquote, prophet, false church machine, the infrastructure of the false church. The Great Deception is going to take over the world, fueled by the powers of Satan. So I find it interesting that you have this person coming out of the sky, and he has keys placed in his hands, and he says, "Thank you, Mary." Interesting. Okay. He walks away and gets in his Jag, and as he's leaving, the shot has an arrow pointing to the jet, but if you really look at it behind the surface layer, it's really a pyramid. When you have the jet and he gets in there, it's the Illuminati pyramid. She's standing there and he's taking off. The jet that he arrived in is at the top of the pyramid. So the eye of illumination, the eye of providence, the Lucifer eye, is Lucifer falling from heaven, coming out of the sky, at the top of the pyramid in this frame. And if, ladies and gentlemen, if you look at it, freeze it, the jet's on top of the pyramid as he leaves. Okay, that speaks for itself right there, that the Illuminati arrival of the providence, the illuminated one, has happened. The transfer has taken place. He now has the keys. So he gets in his Jag, and he starts to drive. The next scene has another British actor, I forget his name, and he says, he's in the helicopter, and by the way, he's the actor that was in the movie Thor and the Avengers. He's the bad guy. He's Thor's brother. And in the helicopter, he says, "We're more focused," and he pauses, and then he says, "More precise." Now, let me stop right there. One of the main, Doug, let's go back to the Super Bowl. Those hats were on their head, on the third eye, right? The eye of illumination on the third eye. The third eye is very key. Okay. He says we're more focused. There's another reference to the eye. Wow, Nathan, how did I miss that? I know, but it's right there. And then he says more precise. The Masons, the Illuminati are they're very acquainted with precision, with blueprints, with architecture, it has to be just right, with detail of design. So in those lines right there, he's talking about the third eye and the architectural elements, the compass, the Masonic tools that are used. So we're more focused, more precise, and he's drinking a cup of coffee, and next to him is a lamp. Next to the guy in the helicopter, and the light is on.
Yeah.
Again, another reference to the light, the illumination, Illuminati. I mean, why would he have a lamp right there? Okay, then it goes to the next frame, where he's the actor Mark Strong in the Jag. It moves to him, and he says, "We're always one step ahead." So, again, the octopus of the New World Order has all of these tentacles, but one of them is Tavistock that is scripting the narrative. They're scripting out the events, the plan. Everything is according to their script, according to an exact timeline. They know what they want to do. They have a date for it to happen. So when they get together, they discuss that. And so they're ahead of the general public because the public doesn't know what's coming. So we're always one step ahead. That's the Illuminati talking. He's in his Jag, and he says that, but then he does something interesting. Since we saw him at the beginning come down out of the sky, Satan fell from heaven. So he represents several things. He represents the Illuminati, the tentacles of the New World Order, Tavistock, the mind control elements, and he also represents the powers of darkness because he came out of the sky. He says we're always one step ahead, and then immediately in the next frame, he drives into a tunnel. So these minions of the New World Order are also have another part of their resume and credentials is they maybe even themselves, who knows what kind of creatures they are, whether they're incarnate hybrids of weird beings made in a lab, or if they're incarnate fallen angels, or the Nephilim are on the earth now. I don't know. That's a whole new program. That's a different program. But in the end times, the Bible tells us Satan will be on the surface of the earth, but he'll also be able to crawl into tunnel and his cavern and do his little planning. So the guy says, we're one step ahead, and then goes into the tunnel, signifying going into the Middle Earth with all the other demonic creatures to do their planning. So that's what we see him do. He goes into the tunnel. So the New World Order, again, Doug and Joe, we cannot escape this. It's not just human beings of the flesh. It is human beings working with minions from hell, with spiritual, deluding spirits. I read it, 1 Timothy 4:1. Seducing spirits are involved. Okay, then in the next frame, it goes back to Ben Kingsley at his lair of evil, where he's hiding out, and he's putting on his tie, and Ben Kingsley says, we have a certain style, an eye for detail. Again, an eye, there it is again. So now we see the eye being mentioned, was that the second time? And we, again, a certain style. So they do things a certain way. Their religious initiations and rituals and summoning processes and ceremonies are done a certain way with an eye for detail, because the eye is a part of what they're doing. And then in the next frame, it goes back to the guy in the helicopter, and he says, and we're obsessed by power, and the red light is on him. He turned red. So he doesn't say we're obsessed with power. He says we're obsessed by power. So the powers of darkness are obsessing them, as well as their flesh and their arrogance and their pride, working together. They've given their souls. They're part of the Illuminati bloodlines, and I believe that's a whole other program too. There's how many families? The 13 families, the dynasties of the Illuminati. They're obsessed by power. They've sold their soul to generations before them, and so they are eternally cursed because they keep the thing going, and they're obsessed with it. And so they're admitting to us that they're obsessed with it. Okay, and then the next frame, we see the helicopter traveling in the air next to the Jag. They're alongside each other, but in the backdrop, you see the London Eye. I don't know if you have the video there with you, but the Ferris wheel in London,
wow. Yes.
Again, the London Eye is watching. The London Eye is always watching. The eye of the New World Order, the eye of providence of Lucifer, is watching every inch and every cranny of this planet, giving, by the way, substance to the question that you brought up, Doug. How in the world can that plane be missing? It's not. It's in a hangar somewhere, and it's going to be used for nefarious purposes in the future. Okay, in the next frame, it continues. It shows a double-decker bus, a red bus, and the Jag downshifts and gets beside it. The bus has number 9. I guess it's the 9, interesting number 9. There's another Illuminati number. And
right.
he travels alongside the bus and looks through the bus, and it happens real fast. But it shows, the camera pans, and you can see the guy in the helicopter on the other side of the bus through the glass. So on each side of the bus, on the left side of the bus, well, it's not driver's side in the Britland. Okay, it's the passenger side of the bus. On the left side of the bus is the helicopter watching the people in the bus, and then on the right side, the driver's side, is also watching the people in the bus. And here's the message here. The people in the bus are asleep. They're not awake, but they're being watched on both sides.
At first, it shows this bus, and when the people on the bus appear to be before it shows a close-up of the people on the bus, when the car comes up next to it, it looks like these people are in hoods. Right when it shows the number 9 right after that.
Yeah, it is. It's very quick. And then I have it freeze frame on the one guy looks like Truman Capote wearing sunglasses. He looks weird wearing a hat. And then in front of him is a girl asleep. But the message here is obvious. They are the villains. They're one step ahead. They have an eye for detail. They have the eye behind them. They have the infrastructure, the weapons, the tools, and they're watching us sleep. The people that are asleep are not driving themselves. They are being driven by somebody else. So what's the message here? The minions of Earth are just along for the ride. They don't even know where they're headed. They don't know where they're going. And while they're on their way there, they're sleeping. They're not aware. They're not alert. They have no clue. Now, if you were to backtrack where the Jag first appears behind the bus, you can see Big Ben down the street, but it's far away. And I wasn't able to make out the exact time on Big Ben, but there's another message in that, and that is this, that they are headed according to the schedule. They're headed towards the time. The time is working with them, and the people have no control outside of it because they're sitting inside of a public transportation bus. So it's the public transport, it's the government, it's socialism, it's the New World Order, new coming communistic, fascist control over every part of our life, where people will not be able to control where they want to go or where they're going to come because they're going to be taken there out of their control, but it's according to the schedule and timeline of the New World Order, because they have a certain schedule and they know how the schedule is going to play out. Okay, as the commercial continues, it shows, well, before that, I'm not sure who says it. I believe it's the guy in the helicopter. He says a stiff upper lip is key. So an upper lip, what does that signify? A stiff upper lip shows confidence, shows arrogance, shows control, shows, in a way, that they are above all the others. So it says a lot. It means that they are, in other words, their blood is better than ours, and as that is stated, then the Jag drives into the entrance of Buckingham Palace, where the Queen resides, the royalty resides. But when he says a stiff upper lip is key, and then they show Buckingham Palace, now they're showing the stiff upper lip of royalty. And then he says is key. Again, another reference to the word key, Doug and Joe. We saw key at the very beginning, the handoff of the key. Well, the keys, again, are important. There's another hidden thing right there about the keys. And then they drive into the entrance of Buckingham Palace, but it doesn't last very long because they quickly arrive at a different place. The helicopter starts to land outside of what looks like some sort of palace or a White House, and then the Jag arrives on the other side. And there are lights shining on them as they arrive. Now, when I saw this occur in the commercial, I wondered to myself, where are they arriving? Because wherever they're arriving is where Ben Kingsley is speaking from. It's the villain's lair. It's their headquarters, the evil headquarters, their minions, where they reside. So I looked and saw it and searched and dug. Lo and behold, I found out what this building is. This happens to be the Queen's House, located in Greenwich in London. Now, after they arrive there, and I'm going to comment on that in a moment, Ben Kingsley, it shows him inside his lair of the Queen's House, and he says, ah, yes, it's good to be bad. Okay, and then the commercial's over. Now, I just spoke volumes of decoding this thing, but the biggest one is about the Queen's House. And those of you that have access to the computer, and Doug and Joe, if you want to do it, if you Google the Queen's House was built in the late 1500s, early 1600s by a Mason, a Freemason architect named Inigo Jones. And if you Google Inigo Jones wrote a Masonic manuscript that has been very, very important to the Masons, and it was written in 1607, and it's considered the Masonic manuscript of Inigo Jones, written in 1607, and he talks about some very key elements of the Masonic movement and the religion and initiation, etc. But it was written, Inigo Jones was inside the Queen's House when he wrote it, the house that he designed. And he was in there, and according to Masonic history, he wrote it from the Queen's House. Now, here's an interesting factoid. The Queen's House was commissioned by King James in the early 1600s. King James was a very strong supporter and proponent of the Masonic, the Freemason movement in England and Scotland at the time. He was a Freemason himself. So he was immersed and messed in this religious cult of control and power. Mr. King James, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the same King James that commissioned the King James Bible. So I thought that was interesting when I found that, so I started to dig about the Queen's house, and it turns out the house has a lot of Masonic symbolism built into it. It has a spiral staircase. It's one of the first self-supporting spiral staircases in Britain at the time, 400 years ago. And if you're able to pull up the spiral staircase from the Queen's house, it's a very beautiful stairwell. But to the Freemasons, a winding stair or a spiral staircase is very symbolic to superstitious powers, and apparently it's able to tap into some of the unseen illumination abilities of the spiritual realm. It goes into a lot of deep occultic meaning, the spiral staircase, and part of that comes from an actual verse that the Masons believe applies to the Masons themselves, which is nonsense and it's absurd, but it comes from a reference to the temple that Solomon built, found in 1 Kings 6, verse 8, where it talks about a portion of the chambers that King Solomon built into the temple, and it mentions a winding staircase or winding stairwell.
This would, in kind of kind of a far out way, this could also reference, or has references to the Tower of Babel. But that's
Thank you very much.
Program.
Exactly, the ziggurat. And this is off the subject, and I plan to talk about this in an upcoming program, but since you brought it up, Doug, I just have a few minutes. Let me mention this real quick. The Queen's house has Illuminati all over it, and King James was not the innocent person that people try to make him out to be because he wrote the King James Bible. That's a whole other program. There's reasons he did it that were not all noble and spiritual. There were self-serving reasons. First of all, to make a Bible and name it after yourself says a lot. But I will. I know there are individuals out there who say the King James Bible is the only one that we're supposed to be reading, and that's a whole argument in itself because really the Bible is written in Greek and in Hebrew, and Jesus didn't write it and give it to us only in.
But Nathan, the King James version of the Bible is the exact manuscript being used by the Illuminati.
It is, and it's almost a side copy of the Geneva Bible, which actually has some areas that are more accurate. And when you hold them side by side, there are whole chapters that are almost exact, and it makes you wonder, okay, if King James's translators were really translating word for word, how does it match up to the Geneva so close? I suspect that there was a little plagiarism that might have gone on, and that's another program. I'm going to ruffle some feathers with that one, Doug, but the truth is the truth. So anyway, let me say this real quick. The Super Bowl, the halftime show started with the giant hands coming out of the sky and plucking the Manhattan Bridge, and they did things around New York, iconic landmarks around New York City. You've seen those, Doug and Joe? Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let me say this real quick. The very first iconic location, the finger is plucking the Manhattan Bridge. The last time I was on your program, I thought it was the Brooklyn Bridge. It wasn't. It's the Manhattan Bridge that was designed by a Freemason. And get this, the Manhattan Bridge is 322 feet high, where he's plucking.
Oh, my goodness.
322.
Right.
The cables of the Manhattan Bridge are 3,224 feet long, 32224. So Skull and Bones is all over the Manhattan Bridge. That's not an accident. I wonder, Doug and Joe, if that's a hidden message right there. John Kerry is also 322. Is that telling us something? Is he the next? Is he going to be a candidate? Is it possible in 2016? I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm just throwing that out. I don't know. The next place that the hands play it is a smokestack coming from New Jersey, the Kearney Power Plant in New Jersey. I have been wondering about that, and I have a whole program I'm going to talk about that. Chris Christie's from New Jersey. But it goes on, and the hands start bouncing, playing the bongos on the Guggenheim Museum. You brought up a ziggurat, Doug. Right. Frank Lloyd Wright designed the Guggenheim and it's designed after the ziggurat of Babylon. The Guggenheim, you know how it swirls around?
That's right.
The Guggenheim is Babylon. So when he's pounding the drums on the Guggenheim, he's pounding the drums on Babylon. the ziggurat, the Tower of Babel. So that I'm excited about that one because when I talk about the things that I uncovered there, it's incredible. And I had mentioned several weeks ago that I believe I found some landmarks that are going to have some events take place or tell us that some events are going to take place. And I believe that what happened with the hands, they end up at Columbus Circle, and then they have several other locations. I believe that what I was able to uncover there are going to show that a false flag is in the works, for sure. I mean, I have no doubt that we are coming into a new era. Doug, it could happen any day. Your program, any day from this point on, can be talking about the big event. And it'll be a special program, and we're going to be in shock and discussing it, but it's going to play out as a false flag or maybe several false flags. The war is going to start eventually. We're going to see bloodshed. So I see we're running out of time, but I mentioned a lot of things I know, but they're going to all be covered in some upcoming programs.
You know what? You did a fantastic job. Just let me say this, because going back to the Tavistock Institute, and I know we're running out of time, but to think of this in a larger vein, for example, that Tavistock Institute, think about this overlaid with the information Nathan gave. Folks, they originated the civilian bombing raids carried out by Churchill and Roosevelt back in World War II purely as a clinical experiment in mass terror. They kept records of the results as they watched the guinea pigs, the people who were getting killed and terrorized, reacting under controlled laboratory conditions. Now, having said that, their single goal, to break down the psychological strength of the individual, to render that individual helpless, to oppose the dictators of the new world order. And this is exactly what Nathan's been talking about, and this is exactly, I believe, at least in my view, of what Nathan has broken down with respect to the Super Bowl imagery and any technique, of course, that helps to break down, for example, a family unit, the principles of religion, for example, honor, patriotism, in this pure sense.
Doug, shock and awe was one of their buzzwords they came up with, and the technique.
There you go. Fantastic. Nathan, I'm sorry, we got about 90 seconds left. Go ahead and wrap it up, my friend.
Well, I know I spoke a lot, and I'm going to try to get my website fixed. I will be working on more comprehensive explanations of these things on my regular program, but I know I said a lot, but I hope that the message was relayed. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to have our discerning radar on, now more than ever.
Oh, man. I'll tell you, what a brilliant expose there, Nathan. I want to thank you so very much for that.
Yeah, fantastic show. We're going to have to maybe do a part 2 to this to finish it out if and when we get time to do that, Nathan, and it's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
God bless you, my friend, and stay well. That's Nathan Leal, Watchman's Cry. Visit his website. It's up right now, watchmanscry.com. Take a look at it. Of course, the audio messages, prophecies, and articles contained there. Watchmanscry.com. Nathan Leal, our very special guest tonight. God bless him for everything. Tomorrow night, we're going to be back. Some interesting, extremely important information in tomorrow night's program. You're not going to want to miss it whatsoever.
Thanks for hanging with us until tomorrow. God bless you all. Stay safe, and we'll see you then.
Good night.